Better believe it. Good morning, everybody, on a Saturday, and it's hot, 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 staying hot. 100 degrees predicted for the morning. It is Saturday, June 21, 2025. I'm Peter Boyles. Good to have everybody here. Currently, I think it's about 96 degrees outside, so it's going to be exactly one of those mornings. Good to have everybody here. We have Jimmy Sengenberger on hold, ready to go. George Brauchler will join us, and then Dr. Tim Furnish on the in what is happening right now between Israel, and Iran and the United States and Donald Trump. So I'm looking forward to all of that, plus an hour of open lines. And so it has come to an end, at least the first week, of the MyPillow CEO Mike Lindell's Colorado defamation trial. More is yet to come, but James is here. Man, Jimmy, thank you, and I know you've been busy as hell. Thanks for coming back up on the show this morning.
Hey, you bet, brother. Happy to be here. Thank you.
All right, let's take a hard look at it. I thought it was interesting that Lindell claimed victory. What do you do with that? Let's start there.
Well, I think he was going to claim victory in just about any way, because this is a moment for Mike Lindell where he was put under a microscope in some respects, but managed to recognize coming out of it that no matter what, there are true believers, and those true believers will continue to believe. And so it's all about carrying on the myth and the story that people believe. And that's what I think Mike Lindell is doing right now. He is adding another layer to the myth of the stolen election and the myth of sort of continuing to fight against the people who want to block him from getting the truth out. And he can continue now that he's out after this trial. In his mind, he's able to continue speaking out the way that he has been speaking out. And to him, that's got to be a victory.
Yeah, I wrote a column that'll be out in a couple of days about there were in New Guinea during the Second World War, there were people called cargo cultists. And when Japanese or British or American airplanes went down in New Guinea, these people would find the remains, and they thought it was nectar of the gods. And there's all these stories about the cargo cultists, and they were always waiting. And then I wrote about Galileo being placed under house arrest by the Catholic Church, where he dies. He had what was called a fever, and he died under house arrest for daring to say that the earth went around the sun as opposed to what the Catholic Church believed. And the cargo cultists and the Lindell people are much the same. And now I witness this stuff. And he skips out of town, and he's been beaten. My good part of this that I thought was, I don't know if MyPillow will survive, but the men and women, guys on the loading dock, and the people on the sewing machines, and the people who were doing the work, at least nobody's going to crash their jobs at this point. Although apparently Lindell's been served by, who served him for what was the amount of money on shipping he owed?
FedEx, and I want to say it was $9 million or 10, but I'm not sure. I could be off, could be even way off on that, but it was FedEx.
And he claims he doesn't have any money. He's been hit with $2.3 million. How will they get that 2.3?
That's the big question, isn't it? Providing that he has been transparent and honest about that. I mean, I think he probably has, but the thing is, they have not provided, his side has not provided any audited financial statements. It's not like they went through some sort of a process to ascertain whether or not that's absolutely true. And he is, as he claims, some $10 million in the hole now, $12.3 million in the hole with this. And I think it will come down to the manner of trying to collect. But that's the thing about this that really strikes me, Peter, is that when we think about the notion of Eric Coomer, the plaintiff, sought $62.7 million, and he, quote unquote, only got $2.3 million. If Mike Lindell can't pay that back, if he's deeply in debt, it doesn't matter how much he is in the hole for in this case. What matters is that he did lose. He is being held accountable. Even if he's still going out there and continuing, there was some sort of consequence here.
Yeah, and he has already crowed he will go on and say these things. And actually, President Trump made the same kinds of remarks. And I'm thinking that's just to cover up what is total BS. But regardless, the beat goes on. But Lindell, 2.3 mil. Let's see what happens. The good thing is the men and women of the factory at least keep their jobs so far, and that's a good part of it. He crowed on that, but that was a good thing. But
of course. If I could say this, that to me it is striking that on social media, on his platforms, Lindell and his people have been making claims that they were not able to present the evidence. Here's the evidence that we were denied the ability to share in the trial. And that is an absolute crock, because this is a guy who had ample opportunity to bring forward any of his so-called 35 experts to testify about the elections, who could have put forward any number of pieces of so-called evidence, and he chose not to. And now, in the wake of this trial, the spin is, well, I wasn't able to do it.
Well, but that's the ongoing game, and it's going to go again and again and again and again until it goes to ground. The next step in this, the 10th Circuit upholds the $1,000 a day sanction on, and the court has determined that Joe Oltmann and his lawyer Randy Corcoran have crossed the line, and now how can you collect $1,000 a day?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know for sure. How many days is that, and how much does it add up to? But to me, again, here is an instance where, at least to some extent, there's got to be a collection on some amount here. And it goes to show that if you were going to claim, in this case for Oltmann, you were going to claim that you have evidence of an Antifa call whatever, you need to actually put that up, because that's the basis for so much of this, and you can't just hide away from it. And it is encouraging to me to see the court say, look, we're not going to let you get off scot-free here. You're going to have to do this. The problem for Oltmann is that this is an ongoing matter. I don't know that he's going to be able to weasel his way out of providing money that is due. And who knows? This is an instance where they may be able to get financial information about him to find out how much he does have, how much he's got in liquid assets versus anything that is holed up and illiquid, and what have you, and then that can be able to determine a lot of things in terms of legal cases and financial matters moving forward.
Jimmy Sengenberger, Peter Boyles together, and it was the chief. I mean, these were the heavy hitters of the circuit court. Jerome Holmes, I think Paul Kelly, and Richard Federico, and they're the guns. They're the heavyweights. And when they came down, they came down hard.
The circuit, right?
Yes, absolutely. And their decision, the plaintiff, of course, is Eric Coomer, and he prevailed in a separate charge, and that was the Lindell. And so after the Lindell decision, then they do this. I don't know enough about how the law works, but the jurors found Lindell liable for making these defamatory statements, but they were stemming from a narrative that Oltmann originated in 2020 about the Antifa phone call. And that's a reference to that alleged call where the unnamed participant references Eric, the Dominion guy. And don't worry about the election, Trump's going to win. I made effing sure of that. That was their claim. And they have no evidence, no proof of anything. And so what happens now? Because there's another trial coming. The Oltmann trial comes unless he's walked out. He's walked out twice, right, or walked out once. And
there are multiple trials on the way. I think most notably for next year is the big one with regards to Dominion.
Yeah, and the company that you worked for at one time, and I still work for, Salem issued their apology, which leads me to believe that they have already made us. There's a dollar settlement that's been made, and so I don't know. I don't know what happens next. I don't know when these new trials begin, but they will begin. But I don't think, like the cargo cultists, I don't believe there's ever an ending. There's always the belief. Do you believe that?
I mean, I think the audience for the belief, or the believers, is shrinking in terms of real numbers, in terms of the leadership, if you will, or the figureheads. Of course, so many of them will continue on, as we've already seen Mike Lindell do, with their narratives and not retract, not recant, or pull back, anything of the sort. The question is, how many people are going to continue donating money and providing support for how long? How long can that sort of fervor last, especially when you do have President Trump in office, having won in 2024? I also wonder, for some folks, if you are in the shoes of any of the conspiracy theory leaders, if you would rather have Joe Altman continue to keep this so-called evidence hidden, because he doesn't have anything. He's got bupkis.
Yeah.
That's very clear. Would you rather he just keep fighting as though he's got something he's determined to keep hidden, or would you like it to be exposed that he doesn't have it clearly and unequivocally, and you get to say one of two things: I didn't know, I had no idea, or I was fooled, and somehow they pulled the wool over my eyes. When any of those people believed it, pushed it, none of that, I think, is any kind of excuse, right? You can't just say, well, for 5 years I've been pushing this narrative, but I'm just now finding out that the guy I trusted his word, that some piece of evidence existed, was telling the truth, that he lied to me, so let me off. Yeah. Let me off the hook. I don't think that flies.
No, the column that I wrote and the stuff that you've written and some other people have written is spot on. And I was last night actually reading Drudge, and the president now wants an investigation done on how the election was stolen. And I'm thinking, if you got the goods, if you got the receipts, as they now say, why weren't they handed over to so many different people in so many different courtrooms, including just recently here in Denver? And of course they can't, because it's the will-o'-the-wisp. It's not there. And people will believe, and I don't want to start up the whole craziness like we did last week, but it isn't going to matter. And that's the cargo cultist part of it, or the Catholic Church in Galileo. It didn't matter how much Galileo showed the church that the church had nothing. It didn't matter. And under house arrest, Galileo dies. I don't know, James. Did you get an... Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say that, and in this case, I've been using the term myth, and I think that very much fits, because you have heroes and villains, and they have put people like Eric Coomer into the position of being the villain, so you can give a sort of human face or a human individual to talk about as the villain against the heroes that are trying to expose the truth. You have the aspects of the story of what was being hidden and the quest to overcome that. I mean, these really are the cornerstone elements, of a myth, and a myth will continue on so long as people believe it, and so long as people are willing to continue to stoke the flames of belief.
Sure, and those kinds of things have been talked about forever. And the true believer, it isn't going to matter. And the true believer, of course, the Catholic Church, where the church had to believe it. They had to believe that the sun went around the earth. Galileo, the early astronomer who proves it, it just doesn't matter. It was just matter. It was the sadness. I don't know what to say. It
Well,
it isn't going to matter.
Maybe here's the important thing, Peter, where it will matter, is insofar as those who recognize that we have elections that are overall strong, but not perfect. I mean, you cannot have
Nothing's perfect.
perfection in elections or any kind of system. Exactly. But don't let perfection be the enemy of the good.
No.
But for those who recognize we need to do some fixes, there's nothing perfect, but we have a pretty darn good system, and certainly these things that have been spun are lies. The question is not, will people continue to believe the big falsehoods, the massive stories, but will most Americans find their faith in our elections again? Because that's the thing. There are a lot of people who have had their skepticism increased, but are not believers that the machines are rigged or the votes were flipped. But they have more doubts. Some legitimate, some stoked by all of the lies that have been spun.
And that's...
But will the average American recognize that there is just cause to be confident in the election results and to continue to participate? Because the bigger picture is what matters more than people on the fringes who continue to believe a myth.
I'll give you an idea of what you and I are talking about. Some of these texts I can't read, but this one is Jimmy, Peter, useful idiots, which was a Lenin term, or willful propagandists. 2020 election fraud, now this is, dig this, has been proven in court numerous times. The evidence is overwhelming. Election fraud deniers are cult members that attract the dumbest of the humans. I don't get the text, but I thought I'd read it to you.
Well, we're morons for believing the truth, I think, is what is being said there, Peter. And I would say, you want to talk about evidence in court. Why the hell didn't Mike Lindell put up any evidence in court?
Yeah.
Why didn't he bring forward any of the so-called experts that he had on elections to testify? It is all because it's for show. Yeah. He went in there and put on a case that was focused more on the defamation piece. Okay, fair enough. But then afterwards, leaves and spins the tale. Oh, I was denied the opportunity to present evidence in court. Here's the evidence that they didn't let me show. Anybody who believes Mike Lindell on that is actually part of what this guy just
And if you
described.
think of someone as brilliant as Rupert Murdoch, who paid almost $800 million, why didn't Rupert Murdoch bring these people in that exist, that are talked about on talk radio, that are talked about by the people that are texting the show, the people that are saying these kinds of things, the Republicans who fall in line? Why didn't Rupert Murdoch walk into court with those people and put them on trial as opposed to settling in the hallway? Because they didn't exist.
Well, if he had the goods, he would have moved ahead and not went in advance and spent nearly $1 billion to settle the case.
You've done wonderful work. I'm proud of you. I'm going to go into open lines. There's so many different things to talk about. But, Jimmy, thanks. I know you've paid the price on this one, but welcome to Talk Radio Land. You made your spurs, as they said, or you made your bones. Okay?
There you go, brother. You know what? The fact of the matter is that it's up to us to make sure that folks can hear what's really going on. To me, that's one of the beauties of talk radio and also of being columnist.
And that's the destructive part of it as well. Have a great weekend, man. The best to you. And
thanks, brother.
You too. All right. Open lines are coming. What happened to George Brauchler on Channel 9? And, of course, more on I say no to the war with Iran. Saturday morning, everyone, 21 of June, 2025. It's going to be 100. Hot, hot, hot. 303-696-1971 is the number. Coming up, George Brauchler, and then Dr. Tim Furnish. It is hot outside. Danny Kaplis in the law firm, and I get to speak for Dan, and Dan suggests that you choose the right lawyer who shares your values to go to the win. Besides, and all of that, because you should choose the person to represent you in an injury case that is a winner and says so much about you and how the case is going to go. Dan Kaplis, son of a cop, we've talked about all the things with Danny growing up, dedicated the last 40 years of his life to helping people who are hurt in serious motor vehicle crashes. Danny's believed to be the only attorney in Colorado history to win 5 straight multi-million-dollar verdicts in Colorado crash cases. We text 3 or 4 times a week. Dan believed that, I think, and again, what I think of Dan, but you look at his record, he won the largest truck crash verdict in Colorado history. Dan Kaplis Law, the official law partner now of the Denver Nuggets and the Colorado Avalanche. Dan Kaplis Law, serious firm for serious cases. Danny accepts righteous injury cases on percentage fee basis. If you or your family members or somebody you know is going through something and you need somebody to look over your shoulder, the questions answered, 303-770-5551, 303-770-5551, or hit Dan Kaplis, C-A-P-L-I-S, law.com. I really don't want to relive last Saturday. I wanted to have Jimmy sort of wrap up the week. Catch as catch can. It's talk radio, but it's ad nauseum now. I don't know what anybody else needs, but that'll be enough. Something happened this week on Channel 9, and it was very troublesome to me, only because, well, not just because it happened to George Brauchler, but how it was staged and how it was put together by Kyle Clarke and his producers. And I would like to play it. And we have George coming up later. He's at a ball game, he's on a ball field with his son's playing ball. But the idea of this First Amendment. So if you would, Adam, kick this in, please, if you would. This is Kyle Clarke.
A conservative radio station in Colorado that promoted unsubstantiated election rigging claims is making a full retraction and apology. KNUS played a key role in elevating the claims that Denver-based Dominion Voting Systems and one of its executives, Eric Coomer, were the ones who rigged the election against Donald Trump. Yes, this is the same claim that led a jury in Denver to find MyPillow guy Mike Lindell liable for defamation yesterday. On Friday, the owner of KNUS, Salem Media, posted a statement acknowledging no evidence has ever been provided that Eric Coomer and Dominion rigged the election. Salem apologized to Coomer, said it removed all those claims from its platforms. Coomer currently has a defamation lawsuit against Salem. Court filings do not indicate if this retraction and apology from the owner of KNUS Radio is part of a settlement agreement. KNUS hosts repeatedly gave a platform to Joe Oltmann, the podcaster and political activist from Douglas County, who claims he overheard an Antifa conference call where Coomer bragged about rigging the election. Oltmann has also called for the mass executions of his perceived political opponents, including elected officials and journalists. Oltmann has talked about hanging people or dragging them behind his vehicle until their limbs are torn off. Most of the KNUS radio hosts who platformed Oltmann's claims 4 years ago have since faded into relative obscurity, with the exception of George Brauchler, who is now the elected district attorney for Douglas County. Oltmann was a friend of Brauchler's and an advertiser on his show. Brauchler told me today he does not regret having Oltmann on his program, and he doesn't have anything to apologize for. Brauchler told me he didn't embrace Oltmann's claim, saying, quote, "If having a conversation about controversial topics on the radio is grounds for years later having to issue an apology, I think we're all in a lot of trouble here because everything looks crystal clear in the rearview mirror." Salem Radio's apology does not mention any of its hosts by name. D.A. Brauchler told me he does not support Oltmann's talk of killing people by hanging them or dragging them behind his vehicle, but Brauchler said he remains friendly with Oltmann to this day.
Now, I can't tell you how wrong that is. First of all, 5 years ago, and when Kyle Clarke mentions this, everyone is gone, I had Joel Oltmann on the show. I was told in this, when I went through it with Eastman and I went through it with a number of people, my conversation with Oltmann did not go well, but nevertheless, he was on the show. When Kyle talks about whatever it is that he says in terms of who or what or when people had people on the show. And I had a talk with Brauchler. He's coming up and coming on the show. This First Amendment that we live by and that we are protected by, and we are sadly losing, and it's not slander and libel. Those are separate, but just the First Amendment. So 5 years ago, he has this guy on the show. It was maybe 4.5 years ago, 5 years ago, I had the guy on the show. But I got to tell you something. We have passed the 40th anniversary of the assassination of Alan Berg. We had David Duke on the show. We had the worst of the worst. We went through all the stuff with Rick Elliott. We went through, Alan had Richard Butler on. Alan looked for these people. That's what we did. That's what we do. And to hammer that on Brauchler, and I've had sources tell me that the reason that Kyle Clarke goes after and I don't know, and in a way that I thought was really underhanded, but he goes after Brauchler. Brauchler is an up-and-coming Republican. He's got elected office, and he may be challenging somebody on the Democratic side. We have come to agree that Kyle Clarke and Channel 9 itself, in and of itself, is the mommy news. They do the mommy news. And then Clarke comes on and does very left of center. And there's look, you can drive a truck through the insanity of the Republican Party. Agreed. But on this one, no. And what you're asking, and he, by the way, he repeats all of these Oltmann things as though it was wrong for George, and then he repeats every single thing that Oltmann said in the spot. I just don't understand what we're watching. I mean, look, this insanity of who's going to go to trial next and who's going to be whose lawyer and who's going to pay off and who. Salem apologized. Well, I read it on the air last Saturday, and we don't know the dollar amount, but one thing is for sure, it's coming. We'll find out what Salem Media Group allowed to have happen here in this studio by these people. But I don't know what George's interview was like 5 years ago, but to hang it on him, and I said, remember those, so you're in the 7th grade, and you're going to, and you're my age, and you're going to a Halloween party, and we've talked about this. We weren't going blackface, but we called ourselves bums and hobos. And my mom would burn the end of a cork, generally out of a wine bottle or a bottle of something, and then just draw streaks on your face. We didn't have money for masks, so we had streaky things and an old hat on, and we called ourselves bums or hobos. So 50 years later, you're going to run for office, and somebody has this picture of you in blackface, and they stick it up there. They go, there he is, he's in blackface. But Brauchler, I don't know what Brauchler's relationship with Altman is. Altman is, he apparently will stand trial for things that he said. They bring Randy up in the piece. Randy apparently will be his lawyer. But why do you think Clarke did that? To all the people, and I'm still here. Remember in Raging Bull, you didn't knock me down, Ray. I'm still here, Ray. He didn't mention me. He didn't say Peter Boyles had Altman on, and it was a pretty ugly couple of minutes, but I had him on. It isn't as though the guy, the guy was the hot potato. And especially when there were other challengers that would say, well, get him on, he'll straighten you out. We went through that with Eastman. But I don't know. There are great lessons to be learned here, and nobody seems to want to learn them. Your thoughts? Why would they do it? Why would they do it to George? I mean, George is an elected official. He holds office and he has a future in the business. We'll see what happens. The text messaging is getting nastier and nastier. I don't want to do this with you guys. I mean, truly, the cargo cultist Catholic Church nonsense of the steal. There are radio shows you can talk to, and those people are going to be derriere smoochers, but I just don't want to hear it. Take it on down the road kicking rocks. But talk about this. What has happened to these people that can do this? Also, and coming up, Tim Furnish is on the show this morning. We're going to talk about the war. The United States is in war with Iran. With Iran again? How many times have we gone to war with Iran? Just in your lifetime. We have no business being in this war. We have none. No business at all. Let this be settled. Let those people settle it. But you pull your, and one of the reasons Trump was so appealing to me was because he said no more of these endless foreign wars. I said, you're my man. And now he's in debate on whether we get into this war. Why? Ask yourself this, and lines are open 303-696-1971. Did the Iranians come here, or did we go to Iran? Did the Iranians come here in the late 30s and in the early 40s, or did the United States of America go there? Did the CIA overthrow a duly elected government in that country? Did we meddle in their politics? Did we meddle in their elections? Did we help the Shah set up a secret police? Did we do these things? I'm not making the Iranians heroes by any stretch. But this war with Iran. All right. So, no guts, no glory, 303-696-1971. It's going to be 100 degrees. Need a name on line 2, and we'll go to work. A lot of really interesting email or text messaging that I just don't feel like this is my day. I want to read this stuff. It's we can take other calls. Give me a name on that line too, and we'll go to work. 303-696-1971. Brauchler's coming up. I talked to George. We had a private conversation, and then Dr. Tim Furnish, who really, really, really is an expert on the ME.
Just over 1 minute.
We got over a minute. We got Matt. We got a minute, and then we got a break, and I can put you on hold and bring you back. You're on the show.
No problem, Peter. Great stuff. Of course, great show. I love how we just get right to the nuts and bolts, which is the biggest sort of next move for America, the MAGA movement. You just hit it. This was a no-war president. This was America First president. The events in Iran are neither. And so question is this, Peter, is he's going to lose half his base. He already lost me when he got captured, meaning support America, but you don't have my blind allegiance on anything else going, from this point forward. Now that he's been exposed as potentially captured by the warmongering globalist type of people. Peter, the question is this: can Trump retain all of his MAGA coalition, even though he says we're going to go in and invade Iran, or we're going to demolish Gaza-style Iran? Will everybody sign up for that? Because here's the question, Peter. He will absolutely be impeached at the
Matt,
midterms if he loses MAGA.
Put Matt on hold. We return on the other side. It's Saturday, June 21, 2025. Brauchler coming up. Dr. Tim Furnish. We have one line open. It is a Saturday.
Your 7:10 5-day forecast. Sunshine hot once again for this Saturday. Breezy winds this afternoon with highs middle and upper 90s. Lows tonight low and mid 60s. Skies clear. A little more cloud cover in the afternoon Sunday. Still reaching the low 90s for highs and lows upper 50s. Temps drop precipitously Monday through Wednesday. Temperatures upper 70s and low 80s with scattered afternoon and evening showers and thunderstorms. Weather brought to you by Colorado's Best Roofing, reminding you to protect your home from the harsh Colorado weather. Schedule your free no-obligation roof inspection at roofingcolorado.com. Meteorologist Don Watzel in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
It's hot. There's a motorcycle in the background. Saturday morning, June 21, 2025. 100 degrees will be the high, 65 tonight, and 94 tomorrow. Phone number 303-696-1971. There's one line open. George Brauchler coming up, and then Dr. Tim Furnish. Happy today to talk to you about our friends at Water Pros. And Water Pros cares about the quality of your water. You can remove forever chemicals, microplastics, hard water. I got this system, the Water Pros Peter Boyles Special. And well, first of all, just bring them out to your home. You make a phone call, 303-862-5554. It's pretty easy. 303-862-5554. They come and test your water. They will show you. Start the process. Go to waterpros.net and sign up for your free in-home consultation. They come to your home, they test your water, they answer all your questions, all the concerns you have about your water. These are great guys. We've been around them. I like them. You'll like them. Water Pros is family-owned, veteran-owned business dedicated to providing you the best in water treatment for less than the other guys. They're the real deal. Waterpros.net. Request your free test, 303-862-5554. I think we go back to Matt, if you would, punch it up. Matt in Littleton, if we're talking about the series of attacks and the counterattacks that are taking place right now, Tehran launches drones and missiles into Tel Aviv. Israel continues bombing even more targets. As of a few days ago, the best numbers were apparently several dozen Israelis and several hundred Iranians have been killed. Back to you, Matt. It's yours.
Excellent, Peter. And so what we're doing is bringing ourselves right up to the point in which if Trump says we're in, and I think the language is very aggressive, and he's sort of get him off the hook, because if they do invade, always remember we gave them the 2 weeks. They said no. They caused harm. So we had the right to annihilate. But here's what's going on, Peter. You're hearing the same messaging from the White House, fans of Donald Trump, the of course, establishment, Fox News, all these people with that same message, big bold letters, we cannot let Iran have a nuclear. And it's implied, Peter, almost that at any cost, we will not let them go. Do you think MAGA begins to split?
Look at
MAGA begin to say, can't go that far.
Tucker Carlson right now, I don't know if you saw that interview, but Carlson,
I did.
He just took them apart.
Yeah.
I mean, it was much. I was telling someone there's a wonderful book from years and years ago. It was called The Best and the Brightest. It was David Halberstam, and they're talking about going after the Cubans, and they're going to invade Cuba, and they're sitting in, and there's LeMay. I mean, the Dulleses were gone by then, but the Kennedys are there. The roundup of the the new frontier is sitting in, and they're deciding on what to do about the Cuban missiles. And they bring in this Marine full colonel. And it reminded me of that interview that Tucker Carlson did. And this is prior to PowerPoint. And he has an easel, and on the easel, he has a map of the United States. And he flips over the first transparency, and they see that Cuba stretches from about New York to Chicago. I mean, Cuba's Cuba's the length of the island chain.
Yeah.
And they're kind of taking the air out of the room, and then he flips another transparency over, and it's a little black mark about where Indianapolis is, and the room is silent, and then someone says, "What's the black mark?" And the colonel says, "That's Tarawa." And it was one of the moments with the Kennedys. And when I saw Tucker Carlson take him down, well, he didn't know the population. It was like a George Bush moment before Afghanistan or before. And how many people actually live there, and how sophisticated are they? And he had no idea. And he's Secretary of State. And I don't know what Donald Trump's going to do. But it's not. I mean, it's not our war. It really isn't.
No.
And people talk about, well, we're going to war with Iran again. How many times have we been to war with Iran just in your lifetime?
Well, exactly. And I think that's what we saw kind of get highlighted on that Tucker interview is both conservatives, both completely against the left, but you have this, like my folks would be a lot in the line of the Ted Cruz, where we always love Israel, we always are the arbiter of peace around the world, and if Trump says it, we're in with it. Okay, there's that crowd. There's a crowd that's also saying, well, hold on a second. This looks like the exact same playbook that we see with every Democrat, every rhino, every establishment guy. Trump now sounds like Fox News, sounds like much senators.
He's mad at Fox.
That, to me, is the turning point.
He's mad at Fox right now. Donald Trump's back mad at Fox.
He is.
And we're by no means saying don't support Israel. The point of this is we should do so based on not somebody's contentious interpretation of biblical history. I'm over that. God is not a real estate agent. I'm sorry, but the conflict.
Well, and don't forget, Peter, this form of Judaism that is practiced in America and in Israel present day, Talmudic, Rabbinic Judaism, don't get confused. That looks nothing like Abraham, Moses, and King David. These are very different. So the blind support of just the drawn imaginary borders of Israel, that doesn't automatically compel us to some kind of biblical calling. So you are right about that. This just comes down to, Peter, do I have the right to tell your son you're going to go, or your grandchild, you're going to go potentially die in this conflict? And of course not. It sounds ridiculous. Peter, I just want to make sure, though, that we're on the same page here. This really feels like a setup from October 7th. If you remember the 2-hour gap in response by the IDF, and that was supposedly just a mistake, okay? And if you believe that, okay, fine. I don't necessarily believe that, but let's see for a second, right? And so it looks like Israel's war on terror, Israel's war on Hamas, was to just get us to this moment. We annihilated Gaza, and now we are on the doorstep of Iran with basically going to force the U.S. into something, instigation in this whole 2-week period. Were we set up this whole time to do this in this moment, Peter?
It's, you think about people being drawn in and set up. How many times in the Middle East, and just in my lifetime, has the United States been involved in a war? And
daily, regularly.
And what is the outcome of any one of those wars?
And failure, death, destruction.
I rest my case.
2 minutes. There you go.
Thank you.
We're doing it again.
All right.
Thanks, Peter. Good
You're
stuff.
welcome. You too. We go to Stephen. Stephen, you waited. Thank you. It's Saturday. Good morning.
Hey, Peter, I'll be quick. So here's the story on Altman. Altman gets up. He leads the deposition. Judge
walks
Magistrate Starnello imposes a sanction of $300 a day. Altman starts blasting her on social media, calling her a DEI hire, insulting her and everything else. Altman appeals that to United States District Court Judge Martinez, who's a level above Starnello. Martinez says that's not enough. It's $1,000 a day.
I know.
Altman now appeals to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the 10th Circuit, and they affirm it.
Yes, they
The
did.
only reason Altman's getting fined is because of his own conduct. He basically disregarded the U.S. District Court, and then he went home and gave him the finger.
It's true. And
that's all I got.
No, anyway, he's got a trial coming. He walked out of a deposition. These were people that were on air on this radio station screaming they could not wait to be deposed. They couldn't wait to be deposed. When deposition came, they were gone. And so,
I called in. I called in last week and said the same thing. You do not go to the United States District Court and wrestle with that bear.
No. And it was the Chief Justice that laid it to him, and the senior.
Absolutely.
I don't know. We'll see what these boys do. Thank you.
Good luck to you.
All right. Thank
Bye-bye.
you. We have two lines open, 303-696-1971. Brauchler coming up, then Dr. Tim Furnish, 710 KNUS. Good morning, everybody, on a Saturday, June 21, 2025. I'm Peter Boyles. It's going to be 100 degrees today and 94 tomorrow. This is 710 KNUS, and without further ado, he actually is my protege. I taught him everything he knows. I broke him into the radio business. Ladies and gentlemen, the battling district attorney who I think really got jobbed this week, kind enough to join us from the ball field, George Brauchler. Hey, Coach, thanks for doing this, man, and welcome to the studio on Saturday.
Pete, thanks for having me on, and I want people to appreciate you may have taught me everything I know, but you did not teach me everything you know, and that's why I'll always be way underneath you on this.
I'm starting to run out, too. It's like what we once thought. George actually won a contest. I don't know how many people know this. You tell the story. You won a contest on
this is crazy. This has to go back, Pete, to 2006 or 7, maybe 6 or 5. I can't remember. It was like mid 2000s or something, and it was a Who Wants to Host Their Own Radio show kind of a thing. And you were on that other station there on X Brand, and they had a bunch of people put in for this. They whittled it down by vote of the listenership to 10, and then you had 2 a day over the course of a week. I got in there and split some time with someone, made it to the finals at the old Gears, Games, and Gadgets thing, which doesn't exist anymore. I got to sit and do, I think, 10 minutes live with you and Craig Silverman, and one thing led to another. I ended up in the finals the next day against, and I'm not making this up, against a radio palm reader. You could fax in your palm or send a picture of it in, and she would tell you your future. And so that night before, I remember people telling me, George, if you lose to a radio palm reader, how are you going to look anyone in the eyes anymore, you know? And luckily I won, and I thought, I won my own radio show. And then at the time, and I cannot remember who our producer was, it was, oh, gosh.
It was the Sheik.
Yes, and they said, hey, you can have one Sunday show on a December evening. And I'm like, oh, great. So it'll be me and my dad and no one else listening, you know. But so that happened. And then after that, people started saying, hey, would you fill in for Capitalist? Would you be willing to fill in here? Yeah, and then that's how it took off. It was all
actually, I think it was Chris Olinger. It was Christine. I remember going in, not because we're working here together, but I said, Christine, this guy's got, I always use this. I did an interview 20,000 years ago with Bear Bryant. And Bear Bryant wrote a book, and he had this great line called "You can't coach speed." And he said, I can teach people to catch, I can teach people to block, but I can't teach people to run faster. And he called it speed. He said, I can't coach speed. It's a true story. And I've always believed that. So the first time I heard you work, and I'm not saying it just because you're on the gig today, but I said, this guy's got speed. And he just needs how to block and tackle and catch the ball, but he can be a talk show host. I've come across a guy lately here. He's got speed, and I'm going to see what he'll do. But you had speed, and you were practicing law at the time, weren't you?
Yeah, I was. In fact, based on that description, Pete, I feel like you're saying I'm the Forrest Gump of radio.
No, not at all.
No, in a good way. Yeah, I was practicing law at the time. This is even before I left the DA's office and ended up working for Dan Kaplan.
Yeah, you and Kaplan.
And then I went back. Yeah, but your radio thing where you helped me was even before that. Even I had filled in for Dan even before I ended up working for him. And man, we're going back now 20 years.
No, sure.
I mean, this is crazy.
Oh, Danny had. I was doing mornings, and middays were, and I talked to him all the time, were Tom Martino, and Tommy was there, and Danny in the afternoon, and Craig was with him, and that was a going Jenny. That place was.
Oh, sure was.
Yeah.
6:30 was punching way above its weight, and it was wall-to-wall good stuff at the time.
And it's also when we were doing the Ramseys.
Yeah,
and that's
right.
That was the great don't miss.
And the Ward Churchill era. I mean, there was just so much good stuff that you guys crushed. It was something.
That was Kaplis. Kaplis did Ward Churchill, and did a hell of a job. He and Churchill had locked horns when Danny was at CU, I think. And the Ramsey thing, enough said. But wow, that was a time. And then you got into politics. Then you transferred into politics. Pick up that part of it. A lot of people may not know you ran for office, and talk about what happened.
I did. It was like 2000, late 2007, early 2008. It would have been the second term of who turned out to be my predecessor, a Republican incumbent whose husband was the chairman of the Republican Party in Arapahoe County, which then was not only viable, it was like the biggest Republican Party in the state of Colorado. And a bunch of cops got with me and said, we need an alternative, man. This person that's currently the district attorney loves going after us more than she loves going after the bad guys. Now, whether that's true or false, it motivated me to try to find someone to run, and I couldn't. Everyone was like, that's stupid. She's going to walk away with this thing. You'd have to be a moron to run. And so they talked me into running. They found their moron. So I ran in 2008, and I was told, we're going to bury you. You're going to get 15% of the vote, and no one will ever hear from you ever again. And I thought, man, you don't really know what lights my fuse, but that did. Yeah. You know, I was like, I'm in. Now, I may have been on the fence before, but now I'm in. And I remember telling the people that said, we're going to dig up dirt on you, I said, I'm going to give you a head start. Yeah. Start in Boulder. I was there 7 years. If you can't find something up there, you're not even trying, you know. And they looked at me like, who says this kind of garbage? You know? And so I ran. It was me and a handful of crazy young people and a shoestring budget, and we dropped signs all over. And we lost. There's no doubt we lost. But we took more than 2 in 5 Republican votes in the primary, and people were like, who was that kid? I mean, who was that guy? So I went back into private practice. I started a firm with some buddies in Denver. I got called back to duty and sent to Iraq. And then while I was in Iraq, my buddies who helped me the first time reached out and said, hey, man, it's been 4 years. It's now an open seat because of term limits. Do you want to try this again? And I'm like, hey, if I make it back, fine. Yeah, let's have that conversation. So I did. So like November 1st of 2011, there was already 3 other Republicans in the race. I threw my hat in the ring, and everybody from the other side came and said, you can't win. They said, you're too inexperienced. No one knows your name. You have no money. You're too good looking. You know, all the things I remember all this so well, so well. And then we just out-hustled them. I mean, beat their pants off so that when it came to a 4-way assembly out at Regis High School in about, I can't even remember now, maybe it was April of 2012, we kept everybody else off the ballot. And then we ended up winning. Yeah. We won the district by 7 points in a time when Obama got reelected easily in Colorado. And then when I won the primary, dude walked into a movie theater at the corner of 225 and Alameda about a month later, tried to murder hundreds of people, and it sort of redefined everything. It redefined my time in office. It redefined how people see me, and the rest is kind of history. Yeah.
And that's when that book, The Dark Knight, and you were kind enough, and when we had the psychiatrist on, and I just remember all of that stuff and all the work that you did. And then, fool that you are, you came back to radio.
Oh, listen, I got to tell you, man, KNUS did me such a huge favor. The crazies out there, Kelly and Brian, reached out and said, and you know this because you were the morning show guy.
Oh, absolutely.
And they said, hey, look, would you ever want to do a radio show anytime? And I said, yeah, but I'm still DA. I can't do anything during the week. And they said, how about Saturday morning? And I said, well, okay, when? And they're like 6 to 9 a.m. And I remember at the time thinking a clock wasn't relevant, right? Like it's just an opportunity. Man, did I hate that. Because, you know, as you know, you lived your life doing this. 6 a.m. on a Saturday doesn't mean you get up at 5:30. You're getting up in the 4s. You know what I mean? At latest to get in there and do it. So I did that for a while. Then they invited me to take an hour after you were off. A great hit. My son just got a hit, Pete.
All
nice job, Graham.
All right.
That's live radio. That's right there. Third baseman, grab Brauchler, number 11, hits a smashing single over the second baseman.
The swing.
So they then say, hey, can you come in and do 9 to 10? And I was doing 9 to 10.
Yeah.
And then that thing happened with you. And, buddy, I'll never forget the day you walked in there, sat down on the couch, and said to me, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. I got to focus on these important things and all that. And I remember saying, what? And then Brian and Kelly called me in and said, we need you to hold the fort down while we go find someone who knows how to do this job. And I said, great. And as you know, they conducted their search, and it took them a month or so. They came back and they said, George, do you just want to keep doing this? I was like, what? Like, nobody just takes over for Pete Boyles. Nobody, like that. That's impossible. I can't make that transition. You know what I felt like? I felt like Brian Greasy coming in after John Elway. The expectations were so high. You'd had all the Super Bowls. I'm like, there's no way I can do. But they and you both said something to me very similar that was helpful, and that is, don't try to be Pete. Just be you. Yes, you will lose some audience. You will gain some others, but just do your own damn thing. And that made all the difference, man. And you told me that all the time. In fact, the first few times you'd come on, I'd say, oh, the great one, and you were like, hey, you got to knock that off.
Yeah.
Just move on.
Well,
do your own thing.
I'd had a mini stroke on the air, and I started speaking Korean during a spot print. I was reading a commercial. I think it was for Capless. And then I said break, and by the way, and then when they came back, I started speaking Norwegian, and I knew something was wrong. You stepped in. You came in and grabbed the seat, and I was going to go to the gym and work out. And when I came out, there was all these first responders.
Paramedics.
Yeah, and they said it was in a snowstorm, and it was like, wait a minute, I'm going to the gym. No, you're not. You're going to go to the hospital. But I said, George, you got to grab this. I don't know what's going on. And that was when I made the decision to try and cut back on what we were going to do. And I was thrilled. I thought that was good stuff, and you took it over. But you got banged pretty hard. Let me see. I'm checking the time. Your time is good. It's 12 minutes after 10.
No, I'm good with you.
Okay,
Yeah,
George Brauchler's here. And I got a call to watch Kyle Clarke, and I have that cable part of the TV. I don't understand it, but I can hit this thing that says start at the beginning of the cast, and I started, and we can play it for the folks. So everybody can hear exactly what this was all about. So why don't you put George up on hold, and this is what Kyle Clarke did. It's called doing the job. He did the job on this man, George Brauchler.
A conservative radio station in Colorado that promoted unsubstantiated election rigging claims is making a full retraction and apology. KNUS played a key role in elevating the claims that Denver-based Dominion Voting Systems and one of its executives, Eric Coomer, were the ones who rigged the election against Donald Trump. Yes, this is the same claim that led a jury in Denver to find MyPillow guy Mike Lindell liable for defamation yesterday. On Friday, the owner of KNUS, Salem Media, posted a statement acknowledging no evidence has ever been provided that Eric Coomer and Dominion rigged the election. Salem apologized to Coomer, said it removed all those claims from its platforms. Coomer currently has a defamation lawsuit against Salem. Court filings do not indicate if this retraction and apology from the owner of KNUS Radio is part of a settlement agreement. KNUS hosts repeatedly gave a platform to Joe Oltmann, the podcaster and political activist from Douglas County, who claims he overheard an Antifa conference call where Coomer bragged about rigging the election. Oltmann has also called for the mass executions of his perceived political opponents, including elected officials and journalists. Oltmann has talked about hanging people or dragging them behind his vehicle until their limbs are torn off. Most of the KNUS radio hosts who platformed Oltmann's claims 4 years ago have since faded into relative obscurity, with the exception of George Brauchler, who is now the elected district attorney for Douglas County. Oltmann was a friend of Brauchler's and an advertiser on his show. Brauchler told me today he does not regret having Oltmann on his program, and he doesn't have anything to apologize for. Brauchler told me he didn't embrace Oltmann's claim, saying, quote, if having a conversation about controversial topics on the radio is grounds for years later having to issue an apology, I think we're all in a lot of trouble here because everything looks crystal clear in the rearview mirror. Salem Radio's apology does not mention any of its hosts by name. D.A. Brauchler told me he does not support Oltmann's talk of killing people by hanging them or dragging them behind his vehicle, but Brauchler said he remains friendly with Oltmann to this day.
All right, it's 10:15. Peter Boyles and the man, George Brauchler. And I thought, I had Oltmann on the show. It wasn't a kind interview. It got off the rails pretty quickly. But he doesn't mention that I interviewed Joel Oltmann, or had Joel Oltmann. I don't know if you interview Oltmann, but I had Oltmann on the air. Why do you suspect, and you're not doing radio anymore, why do you suspect that Clarke went after you?
I think he's mostly being truthful when he says, hey, look, everybody else I could throw a punch at, on this has kind of faded to obscurity, so it's not a story. But what it told me was, and these are other people have reached out to me since, they're like, man, if you needed a reason to believe that the Dems still think you're relevant in the conversation, this is it right here. Because otherwise, why would you dredge up an interview 1 month after the general election 5 years ago to have a conversation about this? And I couldn't figure it out. And what's telling, too, to me is Kyle recorded our phone call, and I did, too. Because in this modern era, you just can't trust how they're going to cut you.
It's true.
So we each recorded it, and I expected him to play the clips of what I said. But maybe it's a testament to my answers, or maybe it's because I'm a long-winded attorney, but he did none of that. He just spun the narrative the way he wanted. And he is a very smart man, but he has one superpower in questioning, and that he front-loads a question with a bunch of controversial stuff and then does a follow-up. And it would be an example like, Pete, the internet's abuzz with you molesting collies. Do you support Trump's immigration plan? And then all of a sudden you're like, wait, I don't molest collies. You know what I mean? Like, you want to go back, wait, hang on, how do we get there? So you get a lot of that kind of stuff. And so I pushed back on that. And the notion was, should I apologize now for having had the conversation that we had? And no chance, man. That's just not how it works. I wasn't the other guy who was out there saying, Joe, come on every week and promote your conspiracy theory. It was 1 month after the general, and it was, tell me about your thoughts. I mean, this is fascinating to me. And then what became pretty apparent, and you were on this thing from the very beginning, is there's no there, right? Like, there's just no evidence of it.
I went through it with Eastman, and I had a very short radio experience with Oltmann. I've never met Oltmann, don't know Oltmann, but I'm watching now. This is the next go-round with Oltmann, and Randy's his lawyer, I guess, but we'll see what happens then. But I just thought, was it 5 years, George? Was it 5 years ago that time on air took place?
It was December of 2000.
Wow.
And the reason why that's important is because twofold. One, it's 1 month after the general. So all of this stuff had been out there, but it was all still pretty new, right? Like, we're all just now starting to get crushed with the idea.
You mean 2020, 2000? Was it 2020?
Yeah, 2020.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, sorry,
right,
2020.
right.
Yeah,
Right.
December of 2020. So right after the general. But the other reason it became relevant is because Kyle needed to find a quote from me from when I was the elected DA. And I would be the elected DA for 1 more month after that conversation. So I think it was a way to shoehorn in, hey, you had Oltmann on, you were on the radio, you were talking about this stuff that's been debunked, and you were an elected official at the time. But it was forever ago. And it was like, yep, I'm happy to have the conversation with you.
We have the time frame. Can I keep you, please?
Of course.
All right, hang on.
Of course, yeah, please.
Are you listening? Of course, it was called The George Show back then. George Brauchler and Peter Boyles, and he got jobbed on Channel 9. 710 KNUS Saturday morning. You stay right here. We're right back. It is Saturday morning. It is 96 degrees in the city. Saturday, June 21, 2025, 710, KNUS, Denver's talk station. The weather says we're going to hit 100, 94 tomorrow. Coming up, Dr. Tim Furnish. In the meantime, joining us is, of course, George Brauchler, and about what happened on Channel 9 after the decision came down on Mike Lindell, and then Salem apologizes, which I think is part of a dollar amount that we're going to hear about soon, about what happened when Altman appeared with many talk show hosts on this station. What was interesting is the First Amendment. This wasn't, you weren't advocating what these people were saying. Others advocated, and I think therein lies the difference. But you had the guy on, I had the guy on, and it's almost like I tried to come up with an analogy that in the 8th grade or 7th grade, you were going to a Halloween party, and my mom did this because we didn't have the dough for masks. They'd burn a cork, and they'd streak your face, and we called ourselves bums or hobos. We were not blackface. But then now you were going to run for office, and somebody digs up this picture of you in the 8th grade, says, "Here, he's blackface." You know?
That's right.
And that's
right.
But the First Amendment doesn't protect what you like. It protects what you don't like. I'm a Jeffersonian, and Jefferson was very clear about stuff like this. And I don't know what do you think the purpose again was of Kyle Clarke to burn you down like that?
Well, one, they must be desperate for some news, but two, I don't know if it's personal, and I say that because our office has done some remarkable things in the first 5 months. We've pushed stories out on a weekly, sometimes daily basis. Every other news outlet reports on them in one way or the other, except 9. Not a single story in our first 6 months of existence until this came along. And I thought, man, this one feels like, hey, here's a chance to take some bark off of a Republican on something that is such a non-issue. I mean, Pete, I had Dinesh D'Souza on the 2000 Mules thing, and I had gone into this feeling like, okay, I'd love to hear the story. During the interview, it got so contentious. There was a point at which he said part of his premise was that if someone else turns in your ballot for you, it is an illegal ballot in every state in the country. And I stopped him in the middle of the interview, and I said, whoa, hang on. That's not true. I said, that's not true in Colorado. We don't disenfranchise people because someone turned their ballot in for him. And he goes, oh, well, I don't know about Colorado. And I said, hang on. That's a big statement. I said, have you checked out every other state? And he's like, well, no. And I'm like, then how can you make the claim the election was illegitimate because of these stolen, shouldn't have been counted ballots when other states would have counted them? And it got to be so contentious. This is behind the scenes stuff. Afterwards, I had a conversation with the people in charge, and it wasn't like you can't do that. It was like, whoa. They were like, hey, we got some calls from some people up top.
Listen,
this is a movie that we helped produce, and this guy did not expect you to come in and start throwing haymakers. And I'm like, I didn't either. It just came out like during the interview. What are you supposed to do when a guy just puts his head on a tee and dares you to swing at it? I'm like, so I did. But my point in all of that is, like you, it's like, did I have these people on to have a conversation? Yes. But when you use that lefty captioning of you platformed them, like you gave them a chance, it's such a fake narrative. And it's one that's meant to discourage any conversation like the ones that you have based your career on, which is let's confront this stuff, let's question it, and let's try to get to the truth.
And by the way, Salem paid off on that film. They were sued and they paid on that. And I had a run-in with D'Souza, too, that was, he was clearly not telling the truth. And I just call him on it, and the guy blows, and then he goes to his superiors that are also your superiors, and phone calls are made. I went through it with the guy, but Salem paid off on D'Souza's film, that another one of those claims that the election was stolen, so they paid off on that. Sidney Powell, you get on a list of these people, Jenna Ellis, Rudolph Giuliani, where were they when it came time to go to court and show and turn the cards over? And of course they couldn't turn the cards over, and they didn't show up. But for them to reach back 5 years, Kyle Clarke, and I don't think for a second, and let me say this about the little I know about this business, Kyle Clarke didn't do that. He had help. And I don't know, George, I mean, I think, you're a comer, you're a Republican, you do a great job. And if anybody thinks that Kyle Clarke on his own went back 5 years and found a snippet or an interview of you speaking to Joe Oltmann, I got a bridge in Brooklyn. You were set up by forces outside of Channel 9.
Well, you and I think a lot alike, because during this recorded phone call that we have and that he has, I brought that up. And I said, listen, you've cherry-picked one statement that's part of a much broader interview, and that statement was, hey, Joe, this topic is important and fascinating, both of which were true at the time. That is true.
Yeah.
And I said, if you go and look at, I said, maybe the guys that fed you these statements didn't give you the whole interview. And I said it twice, and then he says during our phone interview, he says, you keep saying that someone sent us these statements. Are you doing that to deflect from the blank? I go, no, I'm not doing it to deflect at all. I'm doing it because if you actually did have the whole recorded interview, you could go find the rest of the statements to put the entire interview into context. But my guess is, because this is the only one you focus on, this is the most damning one. The other people that gave it to you. And he said, well, it shouldn't surprise you to know that, we recorded and kept these things from, back in the day on the off chance. And on the phone, I rolled my eyes like, nobody believes that. Nobody believes that. No. Because they could put out the entire interview. If they thought it was damning, put out the whole interview and let's hear the conversation. But that didn't happen.
We're in the business, and I don't keep stuff. I've kept one interview when I interviewed James Brown. That was it. I mean, all the years of doing interviews, I've kept one. And for Kyle Clarke to claim that they had stored away a weekend radio interview that you were hosting the show prior to all the insanity. Come on, please.
Nonsense. In fact, and he used the phrase, he goes, something, we recorded this before Salem was able to scrub all of their, and I didn't say this, but you and I know this. When I left Salem, they're like, your shows are going to be, in their entirety, deleted off of the system by this date. And for one reason or another, man, I failed to download the only ones I really cared about, which were the ones I did with my daughter, right? So they're gone. And it's not because they were scrubbed. It's just because a part of the business, man. They don't hang on to this stuff for eternity. That's Colorado Media Matters. That's Jason Saltzman, which is where I think this came from.
I was going to say. Yeah, I was going to say. That's my guess, too. And Jason Saltzman ran a contest with we've been over this one. Saltzman, who won't come near me. They won't come on the radio. They won't come near me. But they ran a contest with no winner. If we did that, if I did this on, what we do for a living, if I ran a contest that said, and part of the payoff of the winning the contest was a round trip for two to Hawaii to the hospital of Barack Obama's birth, which there is no hospital that claims it. And no, I'm serious as a heart attack. They ran the contest. And then I called them on it. Where's your winner? And one of the two left town. Saltzman vanished. But he's I'll use a word, he's a weasel. And I would be willing to bet that there's a conduit between him and the people that he associates with to Kyle Clarke. There's a pipeline.
It wouldn't shock me if it came from there or some other Dem operative or something. And I say that because it's not enough that the Dems control every office of consequence in the state of Colorado. Their goal is to make sure they nail down any Republican who voices any sort of opposition that gets traction. I'm not the only one. No. It's just I was the one for the day.
Back when Berg was alive and talk radio was quite different than it is today, we had David Duke came to town. I was telling somebody this story, and Berg, who understood theatrics better than anyone I've ever known in my life. But he would not have David Duke in the studio. But he made David Duke went to a hotel room, and that's how he would do the radio show with Berg. We had the people on that, Richard Butler and Rick Elliott and all these guys. There was something called the Man-Boy Love Association, something, I don't know what the hell it was. And Berg ripped into them. And we did all that stuff. And for what you did, it was a nothing burger at the time. Here's this guy, Joe Oltmann, who has these allegations of voter fraud that he can't prove, and you put the guy on the air. Wow. 5 years, five years ago. Yeah.
As you know, Pete, during the period of time from then forward, my guess is half the callers that called into the radio show were saying the same things, and would take you on, would take me on, would take Jimmy, anybody that didn't drink the Kool-Aid. Our own callers would call in to beat us up, so that I guess we platformed them too.
I go through.
But the point is, this is a talk radio show, for God's sake. Yeah, it's not NPR.
My experience with Professor Eastman got my family threatened. You
platformed Eastman, Pete. My God, you platform. I mean, that's what they'd say. Oh, my God, you platform.
Yeah, without listening to the interview. So I want you to know that, I mean, if anybody, especially when you listen to Kyle Clarke, he says all these things that Oltmann says. So isn't he not platforming Oltmann by telling the allegations of Oltmann about dragging people behind cars and stuff like that? He's saying it on the air. And as though then you agree with that. But he goes, well, George doesn't really agree with that. And I'm going, this is insane.
Yeah, I know. It cost me some support within the party. It created an opening for a vigorous primary and all that stuff. I mean, this was all, I don't know, man.
No, but it was done
Bear with me 1 second. You're going to hear me yell something real quick.
Okay.
Go get him, Grammy. Sorry, he's up to bat again.
Please.
No, I just wanted to give him a little dad encouragement there. I'm sure he's embarrassed because he's 15. So all of a sudden, Dad cheering him on. It's like, Dad, you're too loud.
I hear that too.
I only understand it if this is a political or partisan or ideological battle. If it's a presentation of news, if it's an exploration for the truth or facts, that story makes no sense. It makes no sense. But if you look at it from the prism of ideology or partisanship, then you shrug and you go, of course.
And they tied it right to you. The first part of it was true, the Salem Media Group apology, and then they looked for a way to do whatever they were going to do. And, as you point out, Kyle Clarke's a smart guy, but he had help. And they decided to nail you. They didn't say that Peter Boyles did this. And maybe, I'm an old man with a weekend show. What are you going to do to you? But that you're the comer. If there's anybody in the Republican Party that's got a chance, it's you. So maybe that was the purpose of tagging you with that. George, I'm not sure.
I don't know either, but I know this. Nobody that is consequential to my time as district attorney or in politics watches 9 News. 9 News has cultivated its audience, and it's done a fine job. But there's a reason now that they've fallen to number 2 behind KDVR, I think, across the board on news in every single time. There's a reason for that. And so I don't know if this is to try to gin up more listeners or watchers, or if it's meant to placate the existing viewership. But there's a reason why things are changing on TV. And my best guess is, and you'll know this better than I will, in the next 2 to 3 years, we're probably going to see Denver lose TV stations. It'll probably consolidate to 2 or 3. 9 News will be one of them, but KDVR will be the big dog on the block.
Well, the other part of it is, like you said, I don't know anybody that watches the news, the local news. Talk radio has also been equally diminished. And the only reason I watched that piece he did on you is I got a phone call from somebody that and said, I have that app on my television that I can start at the beginning of a show even though the show's over. And I was appalled. I said, what? I mean, the Salem media story is legit. But then to stretch it out and grab Brauchler around the neck and try and make him tap, I said, hey, I still work here, dude. I mean, I had Holtman on.
Right,
you know?
right. But bring Pete on board. But that wouldn't have made sense either. Look, had they gone after someone who had been a cheerleader for that particular issue, then it makes total sense. But you go after one of a few guys on Salem radio who are like, I don't believe this.
Yeah.
And you go, nope, that's the guy. That's the guy we're going to pin. It's like, oh, okay.
Fine. Good luck today and to your son, and we'll get together and the best. I mean, you're the man, and you come through this with your chin high. We got him.
Oh, of course, man. And thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk about it. Real quick update. Number 11, the third baseman, just grounded out to the second baseman to end the inning. Disappointing. Runners in scoring position. He's grounded.
Be safe.
He's not grounded.
Thanks, DA.
Thanks,
all right,
buddy.
Thank you. George Brauchler. I really wanted to do that. That just... All right, so we could do a turnaround here. And when we come back with some folks on the phones, we'll take the calls. And then Dr. Tim Furnish coming up about what's taking place now in the Middle East. 100 degrees will be the high. Stay here on a Saturday.
Your 710 5-day forecast. Sunshine hot once again for this Saturday. Breezy winds this afternoon with highs middle and upper 90s. Lows tonight low and mid 60s. Skies clear. A little more cloud cover in the afternoon Sunday. Still reaching the low 90s for highs and lows upper 50s. Temps drop precipitously Monday through Wednesday. Temperatures upper 70s and low 80s with scattered afternoon and evening showers and thunderstorms. Weather brought to you by Colorado's Best Roofing, reminding you to protect your home from the harsh Colorado weather. Schedule your free no-obligation roof inspection at roofingcolorado.com. Meteorologist Don Watzel in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
Our lines are full, and it's a Saturday morning, 21 of June, 2025. 100 degrees today, 94 tomorrow. Dr. Tim Furnish coming up. Let's go. Our lines are jammed, and I think we start at the top. Don, you waited forever. You're on the radio show, and good morning, and thank you.
Hey, Pete, good morning. A couple things real quick. When Alan Berg interviewed somebody from NAMBLA, was that Harry Hay?
I don't know, and I don't remember, but I remember we did that show. Yeah.
So he was founder of that group, and what's really interesting, you remember Kevin Jennings, who worked for Obama?
I do not, but go ahead.
In the education department, he was a big disciple and follower of that guy.
Okay.
I used to have these discussions with some libs in the locker room playing hockey, and it's like, how can you guys even put up with this crap? At any rate, so the main thing is, how come everybody's getting their panties in a wad on something Trump hasn't done yet?
Say that again. You got garbled.
How come everybody's so upset about something Trump hasn't done yet?
You're talking about his not taking action.
He hasn't dropped any bombs.
Yeah.
Iran has killed many of our people over the years. I just don't understand what the big turmoil is, because he hasn't done anything.
Well,
he's still advocating for peace.
I understand. Remember, that was the caller. What I'm saying to you is, if you ask yourself the history of the United States of America and Iran, the country, regardless of who's in charge, you have to ask about intervention. Is there a reason? Who's behind whom? And it isn't pretty. The Iranians have been, or have had, a target on them too. And there's so many things to remember about Iran that are so much more, or far more different than the Arab world. And Furnish is going to come up and talk about it, that whose side. And it's a tough one. But you're right. And I hope that we stay out of it. What's your best guess? We're in it. The United States is in it. Don't kid yourself. So what's your best guess?
Well, I think that we need to be fully postured to go in if we need to. This is all up to Iran and what they want to do. They want to lay down their stuff. They've lied forever. They've broken every agreement they had. They were stopped until Obama gave them the money. And they were stopped again, and Biden gets in, and all of a sudden...
I'm going to remind you, it was their money. The money...
I don't care.
Well...
I don't care. Iran has been a huge supporter of a lot of different groups that have caused a lot of death and destruction. And, at some point in time, that stuff needs to end, or you're never going to have peace. It's like I tell our friends from Muslims, to Hindus, to everybody else, everybody needs to stop. Just stop. Just move forward. Quit hating everybody.
Well, if you're an Iranian, you see it differently. And you may have this belief, but if you go back when the Shah's father is toppled, and then the Shah's put on the throne, and then the Shah's put back on the throne by American CIA, and when Savak is introduced and backed by the CIA, and all the things that went on with, and to you or to me, we lived here, but to the Iranian people, look, the Iranians didn't come here. We went there. And the problems that were caused, I'm not telling you that the Iranians are right. What I'm telling you is you always have to try and understand what is it that's gone on that makes them as they are.
It's never been pretty, Pete, when the CIA's been involved.
Well, the point of it is
from day one.
No, but the point of it is that it was the United States of America. When Aramco was invented and British Petroleum was invented, and the overthrow of the Shah's father, then the overthrow of Mossadegh, there was a duly elected, constitutionally elected head of Iran who was overthrown by the CIA, and the baby Shah was Pahlavi, the Shah, was placed back on the throne along with the secret police, the Savak. And they know that. you may not, and I say not you, but American people may not know that, but the Iranians sure as hell do. And up and down the Middle East, these people, they see the United States different than we see ourselves. And
so what's going to happen, Pete?
I hope that they're...
Be a betting man. Tell me what you think.
Well, the war is between Israel and Iran. And in that ongoing war, the attacks and counterattacks, and now the drones and the missiles into Tel Aviv, and Israel is now still in Gaza, and that's not even talked about anymore, the death of the people of Gaza. But in the Arab world, in the Muslim world, that's their brothers. And we fail to see that. Now, mind you, that the Iranians are Shia, and they're also not Arabs, but they also share the brotherhood. And so what's going on in Gaza? I don't know. People are starving in Gaza. You hear the stories. 47
we hear stories about the aid that's been given. Hamas has been keeping it from the people. I mean, you hear a lot of stories.
And it's also getting blocked at the Egyptian border. I mean, I don't know, but 47.
That's the problem.
47,000 is the agreed upon number of these people are dead, and most of them are women and children.
Yeah. Well, I think that Trump is trying everything he can to diffuse this, but at a certain point, you reach a certain point. What that point is, I have no clue. But as long as we haven't dropped anything on him, I prefer to I'm going to sit back and wait and watch. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to judge. I'm not going to pontificate.
How much talk radio have I heard about the United States should give blockbuster bombs to the Israelis, or ourselves fly blockbuster bombs? I mean, it's you're just asking for problems. Wars are very, as Lyndon Johnson well knew, wars are really easy to get into. They're just difficult to get out of.
I think we learned a lot with these wars we were in, because all the money we've spent cleaning up this shit.
I don't think that the United States under the Bushes or under the Cheneys or I don't think they learned a damn thing.
Oh, I hate them people. Bush, Cheney, all them people.
Take care.
Good talking with you, brother. Have a great weekend.
You too, man. Thank you. Do we have time? We're in good shape. All right, let's go. We got 2 minutes. Jackson, Wyoming. Then Tim Furnish will be with us. Jack, you're on a radio show, man. Good morning. Get it right, Peter.
Yeah, Pete, you always do. The critical issue, and the only one that really matters, is should the radical Islamists have atomic weapons? I mean, that's really what's important. Now, Pahlavi was replaced and pushed out by the radicals, and there is a movement to bring him back.
He was overthrown.
Yeah, but that was a moderate ruler, as opposed to the radicals, and the radicals are the problem, and the radicals are the Islamists, and they should not have atomic weapons. I don't think anybody on the planet would disagree with that.
Well, how many people are in the atomic club now?
Too many. Some of them have been well behaved, though.
When it's said and done, and I love my country, but and using the atomic bombs and Hiroshima and Nagasaki were the absolute right things to do, but there's only one country that's ever let a couple go, and it's us.
Well, Harry Truman was the best president we ever had, and I despise Democrats, so that's a pretty big statement.
No, my point is, like, when it comes down to, and it was the smartest, best, right thing to do is to drop those two weapons, but we're the
Saved
ones.
More lives than it cost, for sure.
It was the best thing in the world. But that's not the point. Yes.
Yeah. No. The point is, can radical Islamists have nuclear weapons? The point is, the answer to that is no, and I think that should be universal globally.
This world's policeman stuff. Look at the trouble.
It never works. Every time it's been tried, and they get an agreement, and every country in the world would disarm, The one country that wouldn't was always Germany, and that's what always brought it to its knees. That's why it's been tried for 100 years to disarm everybody, and the Germans would never sign on to it. And without them all signing on to it, it collapsed.
Coming back with Dr. Tim Furnish, Saturday, June 21. We're going to be 100 degrees today. Stay right here. Morning, everybody, on a Saturday, 21 June 2025. Good old 710 KNUS. And it is, well, I had a number that came up on the screen, 96 degrees. 100 will be the high today, 65 tonight, 94 on Sunday, and rain comes in a little bit on Monday. 710 KNUS, we're waiting for Dr. Tim Furnish. We are going to talk about the war, Iran and Israel, and what the U.S. should do or won't do. I'm happy to talk to you about one of my friends at Water Pros. And Water Pros cares about the quality of your water. You can remove forever chemicals and microplastics, and then it's, again, hard water. We have the system's beauty. Again, having a water softener in the point of using reverse osmosis drinking water systems fully installed, it's a gift. And what you should do first, start the process, go to waterpros.net and sign up for your free in-home consultation. They'll come to your home, they'll test your water, they'll answer all of your questions and concerns about your water. I trust these guys. They do, I mean, it's amazing what changes when they do the installation. Water Pros, family-owned and veteran-owned business dedicated to providing you with the best in water treatment for less than the other guys. Go to waterpros.net today, waterpros.net. Request your free water test. Let them come to the house. 303-862-5554, 303-862-5554, 862-5554, and let them test your water, show you the results. Ask for the Peter Boyles special today. We're standing by for Dr. Furnish. We had full lines when we got him. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, a true favorite. Let me quick do his bio because I want to do it right. He's been with us many, many, many times, PhD from Ohio State in Islamic and world and African history. He's been an Arab interpreter and interrogator, 101st Airborne U.S. Special Operations Command. He has done many, many things and been a great guest on a talk show. Ladies and gentlemen, the one, the only, Dr. Tim Furnish. Doc, welcome back and good morning.
Hi, Peter.
How you doing?
I'm good. I'm glad I'm here where it's only 85 degrees in Atlanta as opposed to where you are.
How's your boy doing in football? That was one of my questions when I'm coming into work this morning. You have a hell of a couple of kids. How are they doing?
Well, the older one graduated from college, thank God, is looking for a job. The younger one is the one that played football at Virginia. He had several injuries, and he wound up leaving Virginia, and he went in the transfer portal, and he's trying to figure out what he's going to do going forward. So we're working on that. He's got a couple of years of eligibility left, so we're going to see what happens.
Those kids were amazing. And how are you doing? We haven't talked in probably about a year. How are you doing?
I think so. I'm good. I was actually out in Colorado last year. My wife's niece and her husband lived in Durango, so we were down there, but they decided to move because they won't go into it, but they just decided they didn't want to raise their son in Colorado, so they moved back to Ohio, actually.
There's a lot of that going on. There's a lot of that going around. This is not the Colorado that people remember from the 50s and 60s. It's a totally different state. It's California. I mean, and or a button behind. I read your piece, Is God on Israel's Side Against Iran? I've read so much and listened to so many things. And what is, I'll just turn it over to you, your thoughts about this war now between Israel and Iran. Where are we? Where should we be? And what do you think?
Well, I think that if I was Israeli, I wouldn't trust the Iranians as far as I could throw them. My point of my article was kind of that really American foreign policy shouldn't be run by evangelical Christians. And I say that as a conservative Christian myself, although not an evangelical. I mean, every time you turn on the news, I pointed out, you keep hearing something about how we need to support Israel because it's our biblical admonition. That's literally what Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, said last year. And I'm like, no, again, I'm a Christian, but I'm pretty sure that we don't run the U.S. government by Old Testament principles. So that said, I do think that there are plenty of reasons to support Israel other than that, and that's because Israel's a democracy, and as I point out, they don't throw gay people off of buildings, and they generally oppose Islamic fundamentalism. Now, does that mean that everything that Israel does we got to axiomatically support? No, Israel's a nation state like any other and can make mistakes. Again, that's another part of the sort of evangelical right-wing influence on politics that I tire of. It's like Israel can never do any wrong. Well, no, actually it can. It's just like the United States or Finland or Japan or Botswana. It's a nation state, and it's fallen sinful rulers run it. So don't tell me that. But again, I do think we should support Israel. I think the idea of regime change in Iran is idiotic. Have we not learned our lessons from Afghanistan and Iraq?
Thank you.
And Iran is larger than both of those countries put together. If there's one thing that would be assured to rally the Iranian population, the Iranian people behind the Ayatollahs, whom they don't like that much, it would be to invade Iran and try to overthrow the government. That's insane. Go ahead, Peter. I'm sorry.
I'm just going to say I can't imagine any of this. A war, the United States being involved in a war, how the region could, since Bush and Cheney did what they did, how can the region even stable itself or come back into at least a world that we survive around or survive in? I honest to God, Doc, I don't get it. I don't get it at all.
Well, this is a strong element in the Republican Party. It's not just evangelical Christians, as I've been sort of castigating. It's the neocon movement. We can just go change countries. I saw somebody on social media recently that made the argument, what do you mean regime change doesn't work? What about Japan and Germany? I'm like,
no.
I don't think...
No.
This person doesn't seem to have a concept of exactly what that entailed, changing the regimes of Japan and Germany. Total nuking one country, bombing the other country into the Stone Age, and then occupying them. And this is on a lesser scale what we tried with Iraq and Afghanistan, and those worked really well, didn't they? This is just nuts. And again, I say that as a person who initially supported the war in Iraq, and then afterwards I'm like, no, I made a mistake. That should never have been supported. We just have this idea because we've been the preeminent military power since 1945 in the world, and our politicians are just drunk with this idea that we can just go change governments whenever we want. Despite all of the data that shows how poorly that went. Okay, Iraq is a quasi-democracy now, as it was under Saddam, but as you and I have discussed many times, what did that do? That unleashed a whole different crowd of genies, the whole legion of genies out of the bottle that were not intended. And frankly, the people that have suffered the most because of that are Christians in the Middle East.
Absolutely.
But we don't seem to care about that. I hear Mike Johnson and Ted Cruz, and I hear these other people talk about the Israelis. Well, what about the 50-some thousand Christians that have been killed in Nigeria by Muslim fundamentalists? Yes. You're not invading Nigeria to take those guys out. What they'll say is, well, we have the possible issue of a nuclear war here because Israel has, by most counts, at least 90 nuclear weapons. And Iran, of course, the argument here is Iran's trying to get one and they would use it. But again, Peter, as you and I have talked about in the past, as someone who has studied Iran and studied Islam in general and Shiism in particular, and who has been to Iran, and again, I'm no fan of the Iranian government. I know how hateful they are and many bad things they've done. But there's this knee-jerk belief, if I can put those two together, on the right, and again, particularly from the evangelical right, and you see it all the time in the media from people like Glenn Beck and other people that are just always foisting this on the body politic.
Agreed.
This idea that Iran wants a nuclear weapon to what we call in this subfield of eschatology, hotwire the apocalypse. And basically that idea is that Iran wants to use a nuclear weapon, probably on the Israelis, in order to spark the return of the 12th Imam and their messianic end-of-time figure. Now, this is a common belief, but although there are a few Ayatollahs that probably hold this belief, it is not a mainstream Twelver Shia belief. Mainstream Twelver Shia theology, which is, of course, what the Iranians are, and by the way, what most of the Iraqis are too, is that you're not supposed to wage offensive jihad until the 12th Imam, the Mahdi, returns.
Reappears.
Well, since he's not here, you're not supposed to be able to do that. So this often is trotted out as an excuse to justify bombing Iran.
How many times has the United States gone to war with Iran?
Officially or unofficially?
You pick.
It's always unofficially. And, you know, Peter, as you pointed out a number of times, there's a great deal of mistrust of the United States and Iran going back to what? Going back to the overthrow of Mossadegh in the early 50s. A duly elected prime minister of Iran, who us and the Brits decided shouldn't stay in power because we couldn't control him, and we engineered his overthrow. So, I mean, you know, it's not paranoia when they're out to get you sometimes. So, I mean, to be fair to the Iranians, we have been out to get them sometimes. Now, to be fair to us and the Israelis, however, since 1979, one of the planks, one of the platform planks of the Islamic Republic of Iran has been that Iran wants to be basically the leader of the entire Islamic world, not just the Shia world, which is a tough row to hoe because Shia only make up about 20% of the world's Muslims. But Iran has been trying to put itself forward as the vanguard of the Islamic revolution that's going to take place over the whole planet. And who stands in the way of that? Mainly the great Satan, us, and the little Satan, Israel. So they have, and it's been in some ways an effective political sort of club, as I point out in the article, for them to bash the Sunni countries, particularly the Saudis, with, because they will trot out, the Iranians will trot out this line of rhetoric that, and it's not just rhetoric either. It's rhetoric that the Sunni countries like the Saudis and the Jordanians and the Egyptians no longer support the Palestinians, who are being, of course, grossly, according to the Iranians, grossly persecuted by the Israelis. But also, this is why the Iranians have taken it beyond rhetoric, of course, with massive support for Hamas, which, by the way, is Sunni, not Shia, but massive support for Hamas, for Hezbollah in Lebanon, and for the Houthis in Yemen, who are Shia, but a slightly different type of Shia. But Iran has gone beyond mere rhetorical support for the Palestinians into arming their enemies. And that has been basically the undeclared war that they've been waging on Israel, really since 1979. It really kind of took off in the 80s, you could say. And then the curtain dropped after October 7th when Israel struck back on Iran because they'd been supporting those groups. And then the Iranians then hit them with missiles and for the first time directly hit Iran with missiles and with drones, which of course they've been doing lately. So, we are in this because, thank God it's President Trump. I don't know what Joe Biden's auto pen would have probably bombed by now. But, Trump clearly doesn't want to get engaged in war. But on the other hand, one can make an argument that you don't want this regime to have nuclear weapons, because what happens, and again, I don't think the Iranians are stupid enough to use a nuclear weapon, because if they were to do so, if they would, I've been there, and those guys drive around in Rolls Royces and have, nice Rolex watches, and most of them have more than one wife.
Yes.
They don't want to risk all that. They're not going to risk all that. And what they want nuclear weapons is regime insurance. They've seen what happened with North Korea. North Korea got nukes, and now nobody will touch North Korea because they don't want the North Koreans to nuke Tokyo or Seoul. So, or San Francisco. Although, well, anyway, let's table that idea. That's mainly, and again, that's me looking at it for somebody that lives in Georgia and giving my analytical 2 cents worth. If I lived in Haifa or Tel Aviv, I'd probably see it a bit differently. But it'd be nice to have a rational discussion about this, like you and I think are having. I had the TV on earlier today, and when I was making my I don't know, second or third pot of coffee. It is only Saturday. And I have Fox on, and Fox's idea of reporting on the Middle East is you have a reporter hanging out in front of a hotel in Tel Aviv.
Yes.
Tells us nothing but the Israeli position. I mean, can you guys go somewhere besides Tel Aviv? I've been to Israel. Yeah. Well, why don't you go somewhere else? Or here's a crazy idea. Try reporting from another country. Yeah. But on the other side of the fence, you have CNN on. You have Christiane Amanpour osculating the derriere of the Iranian foreign minister, and that's not helpful either. I mean, it's sort of like the Ukraine-Russia thing. It's like nobody will tell you what's actually going on and give you accurate data and give you an empirical balance. I mean, Fox's idea of defense reporting is having Jennifer Griffin on to parrot whatever the generals told her.
Yes.
And it just gets annoying. And so how are Americans supposed to really know? I mean, most Americans have this knee-jerk idea because, as I point out in the article, the largest single contingent of Americans that are Christians are Protestants, and the largest single demographic slice there are evangelical Christians. And evangelical Christians have been told for years that modern Israel is coterminous with and equal to and is the same as is Israel of 3,000 years ago. And if you dare to question that, sometimes I'll throw I mean, I've had it done to me. You dare to criticize something about Israel, and someone calls you an anti-Semite. I'm like, I'm not an anti-Semite. I'm pretty sure getting invited to Israel 3 different times to lecture at Israeli universities means I'm not an anti-Semite.
I wrote a column. I get to write a column here, and I wrote last month's column that I wrote was a history of that part of the world, and I got called an anti-Semite, and I said, I'm fascinated. Palestinians are Semites. Most Israelis are Semites. How when you write about them, how do you become an anti-Semite?
Well, of course they use it. The anti-Semitic ban simply means anti-Jewish. So, but that's not it. Around with words. Yeah. What was it that you said that caused them to say that?
I don't know. I wrote in general. I talked about Balfour, and I talked about the loans from that came from the Rothschilds to keep the British in the war, and the double cross that the British and French played on the Arab world, and then just all the things that happened in the Arab world that make the Arabs not trust the West, and that was European, France and England, and then along comes after or leading up to the Second World War comes the United States of America. And these are legitimate complaints. This isn't something that somebody made up, except it's not exposed in this country. I think that people should have a history lesson, apparently, and you pointed it out, that the book that's entitled Debriefing the President, the CIA guy who wrote the book, he was given the task of debriefing Saddam, and he said Saddam and Tariq Aziz are watching CNN, watching the planes hit the buildings, and Tariq Aziz said, Saddam said, now George Bush will know the truth. Mm-hmm. Guess what? There wasn't any Iranians on those planes. There wasn't any Iraqis on those planes. And there sure as hell wasn't any Afghans on those planes.
Right.
They were principally
Egyptians and
Saudis. So what they say that the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, and the next day FDR declares war against Mexico. Hang on. We'll bring you back. Dr. Tim Furnish is here. I'm Peter Boyles. It's a Saturday morning. We are 710 KNUS. We made it to a Saturday, June 21, 2025, 710 KNUS. 100 degrees going to be the high today, 94 and then 77 on Monday. This was the opening tune on Easy Rider, the Pusher Don't Care. We have Dr. Tim Furnish with us, and I'll tell you about David Ellis, my friend. You've heard me talk about David. I saw him this week. Take your valuables to David Ellis and the jewelers to get a fortune in cash and secure an appraisal from David for all the valuables that you have tucked away in your home. And it's still true. I'll share the other reasons to see David just in case you don't have a Rolex watch, rare coins, or a silver tea set. See David Ellis for the most meaningful gift-giving occasions. It's wedding time and June brides, and if you haven't done it, post-graduation, just general gifts. David Ellis Jewelers, the right items for the right price for the special people that mean the most. Antique watches, emerald pendants, gold necklaces, diamond rings. Trusted jeweler buying precious metals and antiques here in Colorado for decades. Dazzling cases filled with hundreds of new and used pieces your loved ones will treasure. Visit David Ellis and see for yourself. Look for the black awnings on the corner of 3rd and Clayton and Cherry Creek. He's there now. 6 days a week. Explore DavidEllisJewelry.com. Call my friend David Ellis, 303-322-8779. 303-322-8779. You tell him I sent you. Our guest, the one and only Tim Furnish. We have another segment with Tim, and then we'll go to open lines. What is your guess on what President Trump is going to do given the time period between now and what is ever going to happen? Tim?
I think unless Iran comes to Trump hat in hand and says they're willing to talk, I think that they're going to, I think those B-2s are going to strike.
The blockbuster bombs that everybody talks about, they're going to be dropped on.
Yeah, I think Trump will do that. I mean, I think he's gone too far to go back at this point, unless Iran again abjectly comes and says, "We're sorry, Mr. Trump. Please don't bomb us," which they're probably not going to do.
What does that do to the region?
Well, be interesting to see how it plays out. But off the top of my head, I'd say, well, it gives Israel, even more cachet, at least militarily. I think it helps Turkey and Saudi Arabia, because basically you have a three-way struggle in the Islamic world in the region, and you can sort of argue globally too, for who's the top dog in the Islamic world between those three, between Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and Israel and Iran. So I think it puts Turkey in a much better position, and Saudi Arabia. But I mean, other than the oil, Saudi Arabia isn't as powerful as Turkey, isn't as large. It doesn't have the cachet of the Ottoman Empire. It doesn't have nearly the military Turkey does. People forget Turkey has the second largest military in NATO next to us. Although Erdogan hasn't been acting very NATO-ish in recent years, but I think that's an effect. It's going to cut down the militia activity in Iraq. There's a number of Iranian militias still operating in Iraq, and we'll see. Iran has vowed that if we do something, they're going to hit our bases over there. I don't know if they'll have much left to hit our bases with. They seem to be emptying their stockpiles of missiles on Israel. But again, it's not very far over to Iraq, and we've got, people forget how many military bases we have there. We also have a military base in Syria, although we never really ask anyone's permission. So that's going to happen, and the big question is, even the people that aren't pushing for regime change are saying, well, it's going to. If we were to do that and totally eradicate their nuclear program, maybe not totally, but 90, 95%, set them back another decade, would that lead to regime change? You keep hearing these people in the media that say, oh, well, the Iranian people are going to rise up. And I'm like, I don't know about that. I mean, I heard someone the other day, on Fox, of course, talking about the Green Revolution. I'm like, there was no Green Revolution.
I agree. I heard that
What
too.
are you talking about? There was no... Yes. It's like, and this was an analyst on Fox News. Anyway, no, there was no Green Revolution. There was some marching in the streets, and people did say they wanted things to change, but it was squashed, and it didn't change. Now, I keep hearing these people opine on how much discontent there is in Iran with with the leadership. I'm like, well, I'd like to believe that, but I don't know what your data is for that other than wishful thinking. So it may be that if the United States engages in a strike on Iran, that it's sort of a light version of what I said earlier I thought would happen if the United States were to put boots on the ground, which, Trump's not nearly that stupid. Please keep Lindsey Graham away from the Pentagon.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
And, so I mean, it may be, if, as I said, the United States were to invade, I think that would, the biggest thing that would do is probably just unite the Iranians behind their vile leadership. Now, the question is, if we bomb them, does that result in sort of a lesser version of that where they don't particularly like being bombed by the Americans? The Israelis are one thing because they know Iran has been threatening and not just threatening, but attacking Israel. Iranian people know that. Iran, Iran, it's been documented the Republican Guards are behind killing some of our troops in Iraq during our occupation of Iraq. But they haven't attacked us directly like they have Israel. So a lot of Iranians, I think, would probably feel, interestingly enough, that maybe Israel's justified in striking back at the Ayatollahs, but why would the United States be? So it might be the case that rather than causing some sort of regime change or weakening of the regime, that people in Iran would, again, start supporting the Ayatollahs a little more because Shaitan al-Bazorg is attacking them.
There was a theory that I adhered to that when George Bush, following 9/11, talked about the axis of evil, he talked about North Korea, he talked about Iran, and he talked about Iraq. So what does he do? Unprovoked, any invasion of Iraq. Iraq had nothing to do with 9/11. Saddam had nothing to do with 9/11. And so as people said, there's a guy that lives down the street from you who says he's coming up the street, he's going to take out your neighbor, but he names you and the other guy across the street. Well, what are you going to do? You're going to buy guns. You're going to be ready for him to come for you. It's not a defense of little Kim. It's not a defense of anyone. But Bush and Cheney, in fact, did exactly that. Would the world be a better place right now if Saddam were still here and still in power?
In some ways, it certainly would be.
Yeah, I agree.
And, there would probably be a lot more Christians in Iraq. And ISIS would have never come into existence.
Never existed at all. How many? There was belief from my reading that Saddam was good for, literally thousands of jihadis. He just killed them. They were not permitted, and of course that wasn't the lie that Cheney and Bush told.
Right. Well, that was just part of that hubris left over from war. I mean, after World War II, we were the hyperpower in the world. I mean, at the end of World War II, the United States was 25% of the global economy.
Yes.
And although the Soviets were pretty powerful, we were far more powerful, and we had nuclear weapons at the time. Of course, that changed a little bit, and the Soviets were our rival, although they never really were as powerful as we were. But we did have a balancing power. After the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, we went on this sort of like drunken regime change spree where we thought we could do anything we wanted because the one counterweight to us, and again, I'm not pro-Soviet. I think the Soviet Union was evil, and Ronald Reagan was right. It was an evil empire. It went away. But what happened with us was we decided, at least some in our government, decided we could just go around the world and change governments willy-nilly whenever we wanted to, and we could change the societies. And that was still carrying on with Bush going into Iraq. And I don't know, again, there's speculation about he wanted to finish what H.W. hadn't finished.
I don't know.
And, I just think he didn't know that much about it, and he just was prevailed upon by his advisors. If we invade Iraq, it'll make it a shining Jeffersonian example for the other states, particularly the Muslim states in the region, and they'll all fall behind and they'll be just like us. And which was also largely what we did in Afghanistan.
Yes.
I mean, Iraq, you could kind of maybe defensively say that might work because demographic data shows that next to the Palestinians, believe it or not, the Iraqis are the most educated people in the Arab world. I mean, they're not just a bunch of backwards goat herders, but Afghanistan was largely a bunch of backwards goat herders. And we decided we were going to invade their country and give them Sesame Street in Pashto,
yes.
and that would change everything over there.
Yes.
Just profoundly stupid.
I mean, it was unbelievable and a great sadness. And so when I see this now, and especially the hawks on talk radio and others, and Levin and these people that are pushing for the war, if I ask you yes or no to a war with Iran, Dr. Furnish, what would you say?
Oh, no.
Yeah.
No, let me rephrase that, Peter. Hell no.
Yes. But that's what these, I mean, if the United States airstrikes, bunker busters, we are now officially at war, and how the Middle East and the rest of the world will see it, I don't know. I really don't. It wasn't bad enough for the Bushes. This has to be worse.
And you know, Peter, God knows how many Iranian operatives came in through the southern border.
I was going to bring that up. How many how many sleepers are here?
No idea. I'm sure there are some.
So I know your time is tight.
I still think at this point Trump's going to do it. I think he's going to hit them and try to take out that facility once and for all. I think that's what he's going to do.
But we know that unless there's occupation, the next generation and the generation behind that, whether it's in Ireland or whether it's wherever these things have taken place, unless you're willing to, and you pointed out Japan and Germany, but they were beaten down so badly, and the emperor, of course, throws in the towel. Adolf Hitler puts a bullet in his head. The United States still stays, and Germany still stays. In Japan, I think we've finally left. But that's not what we're talking about here. These people are
we had to reshape those cultures through occupation, Peter.
Yes.
I mean, Germany wasn't that much of a stretch because it was part of Western civilization. You could argue Japan wasn't, but Japan had become so westernized that it wasn't quite a stretch a lot of people make it out to be. But what was the big thing that we did with MacArthur there, when MacArthur is basically, Roman general there, was they de-Shintoized Japan.
Yes, they did.
Because the militant Shintoism had become one of the major ideologies behind Imperial Japanese expansion. But they had to sort of beat that out of the Japanese. Okay, Imperial Shinto doesn't hold a candle to Islam. I will give you one counterexample.
And I agree.
Yeah, one counterexample, Peter, I will give you to some extent, which is what happened with Libya. All right? Now, Libya, Gaddafi got overthrown through a combination of NATO airstrikes and internal uprisings, okay? We may have had some special ops in there operating, but no one's ever really fessed up to it. But we probably did. But we didn't conventionally invade like we did Iraq or Afghanistan. However, so to that degree, you could say, well, Gaddafi was overthrown by simply Western airstrikes with internal uprisings. But what happened? Now, Libya is now a failed state. Libya basically has at least two separate governments, one in the west and one in the east. And also, there are large pockets of ISIS operating in the Sahara Desert in some of the oases. So basically, Libya has become a failed state. So these people that will try to argue, and I've seen some people try to say, well, Libya is a good example. Well, no, it's not. Do you want Iran to be a failed state? Libya had a population of like 5 million people. Iran has a population of 90 million people, and it's in the middle of the Middle East. And you have no idea what a disaster it would be if Iran became a failed state.
I am currently reading about the CIA and two different places. One was Sukarno, and the other is the CIA and Patrice Lumumba. And what the job they did on these people in the Congo, on Lumumba, and replacing. I mean, and that was that point that you're talking about of being able to roam the earth and do what you think you wanted to do with people like Alan Dulles and John Foster Dulles and Angleton and those people in charge. They had no idea what they were doing, and the payback remains.
And Peter, they were constrained to some degree by knowing you could only push the Soviets so far.
That's right.
But America's folks of this persuasion have not been constrained by anybody.
Nobody.
for the past quarter century. I mean, even China China can make noises all they want. They're still not as militarily powerful as us when it comes to projecting power to the Middle East or to Africa. They're not even in our league.
I know you got to go. Leave us with something, if you would, Doctor.
Just be thankful that Trump's in power and not Biden's teleprompter or AutoPen or, God forbid, that drunken harpy from the West Coast.
Wow. Well said. When the open door policy of the West Coast and the southern border, the great fears are there are sleeper cells here. It won't be the airplane trick again, but God only knows what these people have up their sleeve. Let one loose, right? Frightening.
Yeah, but again, Peter, just let me make sure that your viewers and listeners understand. I am not a fan of I'm not a fan of Iran. I've been to Israel 3 times. As I said in my article, if it comes to Iran versus Israel, I'll take Israel on Fridays and twice on the Sabbath. But I think it would be bad for the world if Iran had a nuclear weapon. The question is, would it be worse if we bombed Iran and the follow-on effects of that?
I'll talk to you this week, Dr. Furnish. Thank you so much. Open lines straight ahead on 710 KNUS.
Your 710 5-day forecast. Sunshine hot once again for this Saturday. Breezy winds this afternoon with highs middle and upper 90s. Lows tonight low and mid 60s. Skies clear. A little more cloud cover in the afternoon Sunday. Still reaching the low 90s for highs and lows upper 50s. Temps drop precipitously Monday through Wednesday. Temperatures upper 70s and low 80s with scattered afternoon and evening showers and thunderstorms. Weather brought to you by Colorado's Best Roofing, reminding you to protect your home from the harsh Colorado weather. Schedule your free no-obligation roof inspection at roofingcolorado.com. Meteorologist Don Watzel in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
It's 11:44, 16 before noon. 100 will be the high. I'm Peter Boyles. This is 710 KNUS. Good songs this morning. The band, huh? This really is the tune. 710 KNUS. Good morning, everyone. We start with Jim in Littleton. Hey, Jim, you're on the radio show. Good morning and thank you.
Good morning, Peter. My Saturdays are not complete until I hear your radio station.
Oh, you're kind.
I'm telling you, you're just, I hate to say it, but you're the only one on that station, I think, at the moment that has a balanced approach to everything. It's very sad. But my point is this. My eyes, I don't know if you heard the podcast on Tucker Carlson
and Ted
Cruz.
I sure did.
My God. You know what, Peter? My eyes, I literally thought to myself, I can't be hearing this. He's got to be AI. It's the most insane. I have a senator who's got access to all the wealth of information that none of us can, all the secret stuff. Mm-hmm. And he didn't even know the population of Iran. Right. This is a freaking senator.
Well,
I am shocked.
I used an example earlier that, I don't know if you listened to the show, but David Halberstam, who was untouchable. Halberstam wrote a book called The Best and the Brightest, and Halberstam wrote a number of books, and I had the opportunity to meet Halberstam. But he has this moment where it's during Cuban Missile Crisis, and they're all in in the boardroom, and the cabinet is there, and LeMay's there, and the Foster Dulles is there, and the Kennedys are there, and they brought a Marine colonel in to brief, and he brings in an easel with these foldovers, and remember, they're talking about invading Cuba. And so he flips over, there's a map of the United States of America, and then his transparency comes over top of that, and they takes the wind out of the sails how big Cuba really is, that it stretches from like New York, and it goes through the middle, and it's almost goes up towards Chicago. And they don't realize how big Cuba is, and then he flips the next one over, and it's a little dot, and it's about where Indianapolis is. And someone in the room says, "What's that, Colonel?" And he says, "That's Tarawa." They had no idea. They were planning on doing all this insanity without understanding. No, he looked like such a fool. But that's the George Bush, Dick Cheney. I don't think George Bush. Do you think George Bush cracked a book on Afghanistan and just the Soviet experience? Do you think he did that? Because I don't think he did.
No, I agree with you. And then you know what? I frankly don't go down that road. They're war criminals, pure and simple. They should be brought up. They should be in jail right now. That whole administration should be in jail right now. In my opinion, they are the biggest criminals that have ever been in our government. Those two right there. They are pure evil. I mean, if I think of Satan, I think he's possessed in those people. Well, I will say this, though, Peter. I will say this. If we are going to make our decisions based on the Bible of 2,000 years ago, I need to know that, because if I got a senator saying that, from now on, Ted Cruz, I have my opinion has changed. And that Speaker Johnson is the same way. I am done with I'm independent, and I am not giving a dime to any of these clowns anymore, because they are clowns when they speak. Well, making decisions on the freaking Bible is not what I want.
The term was always religious dimensions, and
dementia.
Dimensions. We have religious beliefs. It is the great line is, these are people who believe God is a real estate agent, and the creation of the state really comes from a number of different things, including what is discovered, what has happened in Europe, but during the Shoah. But when you watch this, and for instance, Mike Huckabee, who was he, by the way, was a Baptist minister, talked about Israel's biblical right to the land. Well, and you mentioned Mike Johnson saying biblical, I don't know what he said. There was the article of faith, And that's all well and good. But if you're predicating that on this is why God gave you this country, I hear that about, people say that about the United States of America. And this country was taken for a number of different reasons. And, you know, all things God aside, I don't know what that is. And so many people, not all Christians identify with it, but man, I'll tell you, it is very much a part of the foreign policy.
Well, Peter, you know, your prayer speaker was talking about him hitting the Furnish, that site. I was listening to people some experts saying us bombing that will not be like you tripping the switch and it goes off.
No, you
are going to release nuclear waste into the atmosphere, and we don't know what's going to happen with that.
Yeah.
This is extremely scary that they're doing this.
And of all places, we
need to come to a peace. We need to come to a peace. America needs to be neutral. America needs to say we need to work this out. And there's no reason. There's no reason they need to have the nuclear situation.
Is it our war? And how many?
No, it's not.
And how many times now has this country gone to war with Iran in your lifetime? I mean, it seems to be a war.
If I was Iranian, I would be. I can understand how Iranians can be anti-American.
Oh, sure.
I get it. I see how they've been treated, by America. We brought the Shah. We have people in the government. We have people in media wanting to bring his freaking son back. Are you kidding me?
Baby Shah. I saw that.
Hearing that? I'm hearing that. That's like bringing Mussolini's daughter back to Italy or something like that.
It's like
that's the insanity.
Letting King Charles come here and run the country. Thank you for your call. I'm going to jump. We go to Aaron. Aaron in Denver. Hey, my man. Aaron, good morning.
Hey, Peter, man. I just love your guest, and he's right about the religious pride. I mean, I have some very religious aunts in Louisiana, and they think the same way. Deuteronomy, the Old Testament.
Yeah.
They think, well, we're in the, as long as we're in the side of Israel, the United States will be blessed as a result of that. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm with the doctor, and he's exactly right. I don't want to make a decision based on the Old Testament, based on the Bible. But Peter, would you use the big beautiful bunker busting bomb?
No.
What do you think, Peter?
No.
Yeah, I think something. And the thing is, though, and when it comes to Trump, see, Trump's a businessman. Trump knows war is bad business.
Yes.
Unless you're part of the military-industrial complex. Behind closed doors, you're going to get paid. If there's any war going on planet Earth, the military-industrial complex, they're going to get paid.
And I'll bring you back after the pause, but I think that the military-industrial complex, members of that group, made Musk and Trump be friends again. I do believe that there was a broker, or brokers, plural, that realized that we need the two of them and we need them together, that Musk made nice to get back in the good graces of Trump, but it was, I think things like that are behind closed doors that a couple of dopes like me and you will never know anything at all about it, but I think that's what was done. I do believe that. And they weigh and measure, and you're right. When we start looking for reference Bibles or Bible references to somebody laying claim to something, and so that we support Israel. I mean, there are right reasons to support Israel, but the biblical stuff to me is. I'll put you on hold. I'll give you a chance to talk on the other side. We that close, or we can do it? Okay. Put Eric on hold, please, and we'll come back. Aaron, I said Eric. Put Aaron on and we'll come back. We still have one line open. Saturday morning, 21 June, we come back, we say good afternoon. 710 KNUS, going to be 100 degrees and 94 tomorrow and 77 with rain on Monday. Stay here. Radio Free Denver, 710 KNUS. Good afternoon, everyone. It is Saturday, 21 June 2025. It's 92 in Denver. Supposed to be 100. What's the difference? 100 is said coming your way. 65 tonight and 94 on Sunday, and Monday get some rain and 77 degrees. We have one line open, 303-696-1971. Began the show with Jimmy Sengenberger talking about wrapping up the whole Lindell thing. And then George Brauchler was with us, and they did a job on George on Channel 9. There's no question, and I also don't believe that Kyle Clarke did it on his own. I believe that he had help from the same kinds of stupid people who float out there and do that kind of work, but enough said. And then Dr. Tim Furnish, and we were talking about the war now that's Israeli and Iranian war and the role the U.S. plays in it. And one of the things, and then we'll go back to the calls, is and it was a Tucker Carlson interview that I would urge you to Google and watch. And Senator Ted Cruz is with him, and they're talking about the involvement of Israel and going to war with Iran. And Carlson nailed him. They asked him about population numbers and sizes. He didn't have a clue. And Ted didn't know Iran has 90 million people. And this regime change is, I mean, it can't be. I mean, it's prolonged, and it's Iraq had 25 million people, and they pulled that stunt in 2003. So to watch these people, and then, of course, the war and trying to pull Trump in, or pull the U.S. in and get everybody's thoughts. So we need to be back with Aaron and give him a chance to wrap it up. Aaron, it's yours. Final thoughts.
Well, like I said, though, Trump is taking the right approach. He's trying to exhaust the diplomacy. The Iranians are obviously doing the rope-a-dope, or they're trying to delay because they know they don't hold all the cards. It's kind of like Trump that told the president of Ukraine. It's amazing, though, that this war in Israel versus Iran has kicked the war with Russia and Ukraine off the map temporarily. It's amazing how that
Gaza as well.
You're right, it's Gaza as well, but with the mess there, and of course those morons still, after all what the Israeli military has done, Hamas still has the Israeli hostages somewhere, buried in these tunnels, these tunnels somewhere in Gaza. You got this nuclear facility.
People that talked about how quickly these could be ended, and much of this is age old. These I don't want to say disputes, wars that are they're biblical. They stretch back. The Ukrainian-Russian war goes back before the times of the Romanovs, and what's taking place now in Gaza. The 47,000 Gazans, and most of them women and children, and oh my God! I mean, and then now comes Iran, and there's some guesses on people. The body count, if that's it, to be several dozen Israelis and several hundred Iranians have been killed so far. But if you start, if this gets any further down the road, if they can't pull this in, I can't imagine what this can do to the region itself. Bush and Cheney did enough. I can't see what can happen next.
I don't know what's going to happen, Peter. I just know Trump will keep with diplomacy, and using the big, beautiful bunker buster bombs will be just the last resort if he has to go that way.
If that's,
but like I said, though, he knows war is bad business. It takes treasury. Same with the Ukraine and Russia mess. That takes treasury away from you and me, Peter. Same with getting involved with this mess that's going on with Israel. That takes treasury from you and me.
Let me ask you the final question, Aaron. Is that our war, Iran and Israel?
No, No, it has none. Frankly, I'm with you. I don't think we have no business. Consider that United States, because of our military-industrial complex in this country, has been supplying Israel with all their weapons, the Iron Dome, which has been shooting down. And I think the United States has been, if I've been correct, because of our Navy, we've been helping them shoot down these missiles that have been coming from Iran into Israel as well. So, I mean, we're doing all we can. But like I said, though, Trump is taking the smart road. Diplomacy. Squeeze that diplomacy until you can't squeeze it no more.
There you go.
The big, beautiful Buster bomb, that's their last resort.
It is.
Peter.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. All right. We go to Ralph. Ralph, you waited. Good afternoon. Thanks for doing the show.
Hi, Peter, let me take you off speaker.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Hello, you still there?
Yes, sir.
Okay. This biblical claim to Palestine is ludicrous. I grew up in, how shall I say, a belt buckle of the Bible Belt, and people just don't read their Bibles. I mean, I'll add one other thing. Ted Cruz is frankly an embarrassment to Harvard Law School.
Oh my God, was he a fool?
Yeah, I mean, let's take away his diploma. The guy's an idiot. Now, what I told your screener was that biblical claim to Palestine. Let's take a look at it. First of all, the Jews did not start in Palestine. The Philistines did. Second,
without doing like a really lengthy piece and part of this, it's the religious, and it's backed principally by America and American Protestants who believe the second coming, and that second coming will come there. And so I've been in Israel. I don't know if you've been there. I've been on, and it really is. I mean, it's emotional. The city of Jerusalem is an emotional place to go, but.
No, but Peter, I respect the heck out of the Israeli people. But let's be blunt about it and cut to the chase. Israel is the last bastion of American European colonialism in the Middle East, period. It is a colonial creation. It did not exist until after World War I.
But I was going to say there was a state of Israel in terms of in the times of the tribes and the creating of the city and David's city. I've been to the wall, and it's David's wall, and so they have been. It's a fight that's a give and a take. That it's yours and it's mine, and it's mine and it's yours. But one of the things that Ben Gurion asked for the title to the land, and he turned his best and brightest loose to show that they had a title to the land, and they came back and told him no. But then they held it principally with weaponry in 48 when the declaration came and the invasion took place, and they held the state. The Middle East is a history of tribes, and it's a history of power, and the United States intervened.
And that's precisely where we are right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Are we going to continue the colonial occupation of Palestine?
Well, I see the Israel.
And that is
the Israel.
No. There is an Israel, but let's not get excited about the terrorists. They're all there. Excuse me, but have you ever heard of Leahy, the Stern Gang? Have you ever heard of Irgun?
Well, But you ever heard of the IRA? You ever heard of Young Ireland? It's
absolutely, and that's my point. Is simply I'll cut to the chase right here. When Alexander the Great died, his generals assembled around him, and they asked him, to whom goes the empire? The dying Alexander said, to the strongest.
To the strong, who can hold.
Who can hold it? And that's the question about Palestine. Who can hold it? And the question that I have is whether or not American lives should be sacrificed to allow Israel to remain as a colonial bastion of Europe.
The United States has deep enough roots into Israel, and if you really look and you go to the vote and you watch what happened in the UN when the proclamation comes down, the first aye vote is Harry Truman. The second aye vote is Joseph Stalin. And it was for the creation of the state. And the embarrassment, if that's the right word, of the discovery of the Shoah, of what had happened, and also prior to that, the First World War and the pogroms of Europe. And there's a moment when FDR leaves Yalta, and he's on. And they go to the Middle East. He's on I think it was the Augusta, and they go and they meet with the king, and he brings the poison testers on. It's like this really remarkable time that's not spoken about or written, but the history will tell you this is exactly what happened. And so he is selling them Israel. This is a dying FDR who's selling the Arab world. He's selling them the state, and he says to, I think it's Fod, and he says there are no more Jews left in Poland. And Fod said, well, then give them Poland. And no, that's a real story. And
no, I have heard it. I have heard it.
Yeah, but the Middle East had already begun. The right to return, the Balfour Declaration, the money that it exchanged, the white paper. But the biggest part of it was anywhere the British have been. I don't care where it is in the world, the problems remain. Pakistan, India, Ireland, Middle East. Once the British have been there. And remember, we kicked them out. Who did we kick out? We kicked out the British. And I'm reading this in the Congo with Patrice Lumumba, what the CIA did, and what they did to Sihanouk. I mean, that stuff is unforgivable. And then they say, these people don't like you. There's a good reason, like you point out, Ralph. They don't like you. You may not know why they don't like you, but they don't like you for what you don't know.
Yeah, but Peter, I am of that generation,
yes,
how shall I say, that went to war in Vietnam and knew about what the CIA did to Lumumba and a few of the others.
Sure.
So let me just be very blunt. Again, going back, you're quite right. Trouble follows the British Empire when the empire leaves, or at least when it's kicked out. And that's what I'm saying, is that what we're fighting about now is the last bastion of the British Empire in the Middle East. And I don't think any American military person or other to be sacrificed in order to hold on to that British bastion.
Well, I negate the Israel biblical right to the land, but there is something of a homeland, and there is something, that it's foreign policy decisions that were made post 1945, but the tremendous losses in Europe, that rectification, and those people getting away from that horribleness and going there.
Peter, I have no problem with Israel existing. I have no problem with Israel trying to stay within its borders, but it isn't. I have no problem with the United States providing free military assistance to Israel. God knows if you want to balance the budget, cut that off, and we'd be very close to balance.
So we're also we want also Camp David Accords, and when Jimmy Carter buys peace, The CIA.
It was wonderful.
But it was expensive. It isn't cheap to buy that piece. The CIA tried to buy people literally all over the world, and even in Afghanistan with the tribes, they were buying these people, and they were as loyal as, Hogan's dog. They would.
Money will buy.
What money will buy, and we have mucked up so much, and the Israelis are tough, and they're going to hold that. They really are. And
Peter, I have only one problem with that, and that's the logistics. What the Israelis are holding, they are certainly welcome to, on their own dime. Now, I think that Mossad has lied to us. Certainly the CIA doesn't agree with Mossad, how shall I say, running around with their hair on fire about the Iranian nuclear weapons.
That may or may not be. No, I agree. I agree.
U.S. intelligence apparently doesn't confirm that. Just ask Kelsey Gabbard.
No, now she's been X'd out for saying that.
Well, but she's not like that. She doesn't have the imagination that Trump knows. Trump knows. Anything that's fast, we'll forget. Been there, done that. It was called Vietnam. So let's put, how shall I say, the fantasies of our president on hold. We've suffered from a number of those from a number of presidents. But the fact of the matter is that Israel survives only so long as the United States spends money, spends munitions.
I tell you what, I spent some time with the IDF. Don't ever think that those guys aren't tough. And the pilots, they're. This isn't.
But Peter, look. Consider the demographics that our idiots in Washington don't know. Israel, 9 million people. Iran, 90. And that doesn't include the Shia in Iraq or elsewhere.
But
it doesn't include the fact
there's miles between them. It isn't the Germans invading France. There's miles between these two countries. But I'm going to jump real quick. But
go ahead.
I appreciate. Let's go to Robert in Denver. Hey man, you waited, Robert. Good afternoon, and thank you.
Yes, thank you, sir. I just wanted to say, first of all, the thing with the TV and the radio, talk radio in Denver. If you notice, KOA went down to 1.7, and KHOW went down to 0.7, I think it is,
all right,
which is way low. They used to be not long ago 2.5 at KHOW.
I was greater than that when I did mornings at KHOW.
Oh yeah, I remember KOA used to be like.
Let me do this. Let me put you on hold so I can take the pause and give you the chance to talk. Because if not, throw them up on hold if you would. 303-696-1971. Good afternoon, everyone. 710 KNUS. It's 19 after the hour. It's going to be 100 degrees. And good afternoon, everyone, on a Saturday. Peter Boyles, June 21. It's going to hit 100, 65, 94 on Sunday. Tell you about Danny Kaplis and then go back to the phones. Kaplis' law firm, and I suggest that you choose that man or choose a lawyer who shares your values, i.e. Dan, because who you choose to represent you in an injury case says so much about you and everybody involved in the case. Danny, of course, his dad's a cop. We've talked about his life so much. He's a great friend, and we spend time texting one another during the week. Dan believed to be the only lawyer in Colorado history to win 5 straight multi-million-dollar verdicts in Colorado crash cases. He's my friend, and he's believed to have won the largest truck crash verdict in Colorado history. A few years back, my family had some issues, and I called Dan because we were friends, and we worked together, and I watched him in action, and Kaplis is the man. The official law firm and partner now, the Denver Nuggets and the Colorado Avalanche. Danny Kaplis' Law, serious firm for serious people, serious cases. If you got a question you need answered, 303-770-5551, 303-770-5551. Call the man up. Dan Kaplis Law on the internet, Caplis, caplislaw.com, 303-770-5551. All right, we go back to Robert. All right, Robert, start again. If you would, you were talking about ratings. It is your turn. Go ahead.
Yes. The thing is, I've been listening to KOA. I remember you used to be advertised on the side of the buses. And there was a picture of you with long hair and a big mustache. And Alan Berg was on.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember Evan Slack with the Farm Report. And Larry King, he was on at night with 4 hours.
Yep.
Every night he had Open Phones America for an hour.
Oh, yeah.
And now most of these talk shows, as they're called, which I think is a misnomer, because they don't have callers anymore. They just have texters, and they don't call themselves text show hosts.
Well, some of it is fear-driven. I want calls. Calls, this is what we made our bones on. But the texter stuff is, you don't want to face, somebody wants to take you, and it's a great way just to lay out. Imagine, we talked about Kyle Clarke this morning. Imagine if Kyle Clarke had to take calls. I mean, he's doing a show. He's ripping on Brauchler. Imagine if he had to take calls. He couldn't do it.
He's a total nerd.
Say again?
He's a dork.
Well, but it's a good way to not have to deal with contentious people. And it's a...
Well, I mean, Mike Rosen used to have his intro music, Take Your Best Shot.
Oh, absolutely.
And
absolutely.
I mean, that's what talk radio makes it exciting and gets the ratings.
So what we would do is when we had our phone screeners, our producers, give me the guy that disagrees with me. Give me the guy that hates me. Give me that guy. Don't give me the guy who's going to, he's screening calls. We got 3 or 4 lines. I want the guy that's going to make the call that's going to be good, and it's going to be, attacks and counterattacks. And now talk radio has, in my opinion, has slipped into something that may or may not survive. It'll survive in one form or another, but what it once was, when it had in the era, the golden era of talk, is has been diminished.
Yeah, like when Lee Larson came in and said, "Get rid of the turntables," and it was radical. And
I talked to him the other day. What a great man.
I've watched your interview with him on your podcast.
He's something. Still is.
Yes, but Michael Roberts did a piece on the TV stations, how that the number one 9 News only has a quarter of the viewers they had 15 years ago.
Local television news has been diminished. There are no. I mean, the Denver Post principally survives on sports. Local sports still sparks interest. Local television, I don't know. Talk radio has its moments, but maybe maybe there's too much that it can be spread out. Now with everything that's happening on the internet and people podcasting and everything, the technology's changing a lot of everything too as well, Robert. So but trying to hold people, it's kind of losing. It is losing.
Yeah, but I mean, KOA used to be number 4.
Oh, we were higher than that.
Yeah, they were number 1 for years. Years.
Yes.
And I think if they went back to having callers like Mike Rosen did, even with all this new streaming and technology and browsing the web, I think they would really get their ratings back up there.
Well, we'll see what happens. Remember, the other thing, too, is that the money market people bought in and took over. And they started to... Oh, and how much can you squeeze the lemon? How much juice can you get out of the lemon? And it was the money guys. And so when they started putting people in groups of 6 and 8 groups and 6 and 8 stations together, and they'd say, well, each of these radio stations has a PR person. Well, let's get rid of 4 of the PR persons and keep 2. And we're going to save this much money by getting rid of them. And then we have the person that does the radio logs, and each station had a person who did the logs. We're going to get rid of 4 or 5 of them, and these 1 or 2 people are going to do all the logs. And they kept squeezing and squeezing and squeezing and squeezing, and then it got to this idea where even some of the big sports teams, they looked at them and they said, what is the cost of having this team when we broadcast their rights and we pay them this much? What if we just dump them and we put somebody on the air and we make a couple of bucks having this man or woman host a call-in show? I mean, that's the kind of consideration. So it really becomes what people never realized is that radio, and I think that time has come and gone, that radio once meant something to an awful lot of people. It was very personal. And that era is slipped away, and it's partly the fault of radio, technology, but a lot of it was when the money operators, the trust funders, the big money characters got their hands on the radio stations, they killed them. They were trying to make what they made $1 from before. They wanted to make $5 now, and they just killed the stations. And now they
yes, I think you're right.
Oh,
there's so much. The Federal Reserve has created so much money since 1980. There are now 780 billionaires in the U.S. versus 13 in 1980. And with all this creation of money that trickles down to people like me, there's a lot of money out there.
Well,
and
they were looking to buy.
Everybody's become greedy.
Well,
for every little penny.
But
everybody's stingy.
Some of these characters that are running these big corporate radio conglomerates are firing single moms who did who would put together what's called the log, what runs when, and they would fire them, and I saw it and I heard it, and we find out later they're building mansions on Long Island. And your point's well taken. I listened to some of that and saw some of that, and it was disgusting. But
I bet. Wow.
You take care.
Can I say something else about
real quick
Israel? Iran situation?
Sure.
Okay, Iran has launched over 20 satellites, one of them carrying a payload of 600 and some pounds. They also have hypersonic missiles that travel better than 6,000 miles an hour and are multi-directional. They can change direction, and they're evading the Iron Dome and the Patriot missiles. And, the United States just this year successfully developed a hypersonic missile.
If something
just
happens,
this year.
They're called tripwire wars. And First World War is a tripwire. Then you kick the wire, you step on the wire, you hook the wire, and when you set off the wire, that's the trip. And they're called tripwire wars. And that's what we're looking at right now. And if somebody steps on that wire or trips that wire, we're in trouble. I really appreciate a good call. Thank you. We go to Mike in Littleton. Hey, Mike, good afternoon. You're on the show. Thanks, man.
Well, you're welcome. Good afternoon. I wanted to thank you and maybe your producer for bringing on Dr. Furnish.
Oh, I've known him forever. I've known him for 20 years. Yeah.
I heard him before somewhere in the past. But anyways, the reason I want to thank you, though, is that he is knowledgeable and presents a informed viewpoint, a realistic viewpoint, as opposed to what I've been hearing continuously for about the last week or more. It's just like narrative building, Yes. As an example, he said, I've heard over and over again, the Ayatollah is crazy, wants to get hold of a bomb, wants to destroy the world, bring back the 13th Imam, all this kind of stuff. Furnish basically said, no. There's this element out there in Iran, but it's not the whole country.
No.
So we get presented these pictures. I call it magic thinking. People that hey, if we just get rid of the Ayatollah, it's all going to be better.
Well, you go back to as far back as one wants to go, but it was 79, and the Islamic Revolution takes place, and the ouster of the Shah, and. We kept the Shah there.
Oh yeah.
And now the
I just saw a picture of the baby Shah, the little Shah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, he even reminds me. He looks like his dad. I remember.
Absolutely.
That's 50 years ago, but I lived through that. Peter, I was thinking. I was born in '53. I think that was the year that we got Kermit Roosevelt and gang involved and got rid of Mossadegh, didn't we, in Iran?
Kermit Roosevelt and the CIA, and here's this guy duly elected. And there were what we call environmental crimes were taking place in the oil fields, and the Iranian people were getting screwed out of everything. And the oil was being taken, and Mossadegh, what he did was he nationalized the oil fields, and that was his. And then they sold him as a communist. But he was a devout Muslim, and of course one of the tenets of Marxism is atheism, and then they started on all the Iranian, the 12 Shia that you're talking about, and the Mahdi and. And no. Look, these are educated, sophisticated people, and they're not
Persians.
That's right.
And it's also, I'm pretty big in archaeology, but it's maybe the oldest continuous civilization, if you want to call it that, in all its different forms. 5,000 years old. They've had Persians in one form or another.
Yep.
In that region there, and here we are today.
From the time of Cyrus and before. They look. These people are aware, and as what did Furnish say? These aren't goat herders in up in the mountains in Afghanistan. These are people that know what they're talking about, and it is the tripwire. It's what Barbara Tuchman talked about, the tripwire. You could trip it, and if you do trip it, there's no coming back from it.
Well, more magic thinking. We've got this philosophy now that we've got this magic bomb that we're going to run over there, and we're going to drop it, and it's going to be the end of the whole nuclear program. It's 270 feet. I only heard one other person last week, and I consumed a fair amount of talk radio. One other person say, "Wait a minute, that's magic thinking. We may have to drop as many as 10 because." These things are not precision guided. They don't necessarily get down 270 or 300 feet.
I can hold you, or I can drop you. I got a break. You want to come back on the other side?
All right, I'll hold for a minute.
All right, hold them. Put them on hold. We'll take the turnaround. It's Saturday afternoon, everyone. 710 KNUS. I'm Peter Boyles. We got time for a couple calls. 303-696-1971.
Your 710 5-day forecast. Sunshine hot once again for this Saturday. Breezy winds this afternoon with highs middle and upper 90s. Lows tonight low and mid 60s. Skies clear. A little more cloud cover in the afternoon Sunday. Still reaching the low 90s for highs and lows upper 50s. Temps drop precipitously Monday through Wednesday. Temperatures upper 70s and low 80s with scattered afternoon and evening showers and thunderstorms. Weather brought to you by Colorado's Best Roofing, reminding you to protect your home from the harsh Colorado weather. Schedule your free no-obligation roof inspection at roofingcolorado.com. Meteorologist Don Watzel in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
We have a line open. Good afternoon, everyone. I heard you're working for the CIA. 100 degrees will be the high, 94 on Sunday. The question is, and I think fairly simplistically asked and very difficult to answer, but Israel's fight with Iran, is it ours? Ask that. A war with Iran would wreck the region, and are you not fed up with that, what this country has been doing with wars in places that people have done nothing to us? And we end up in these wars that are not only costly, expensive, the young men and women who lose their lives, who are damaged for the rest of their lives, and we'll never know how many Arabs and others died or how many people in Southeast Asia died, and the sadness goes on. All right, so we have a chance. Mike in Littleton gets a chance to finish up his call. Go ahead, sir.
Well, I would guess I would finish by saying, yeah, I'm definitely fed up. But even if our magic bomb works and we destroy the program, what's going to stop them from rebuilding things? Does that mean we have to always be ready to bomb? At any given minute here? And,
it's killing it.
What happens if the regime crumbles and it goes to chaos there? What do we do with all the consequences of that?
You cannot defeat a birth rate, and that's what the colonialists learned was that Japan and Germany were different cases, but the other places in the world you can't beat a birth rate. And you kill this generation of these people off in Gaza. The next generation underneath them comes up and they're worse in terms of their intensity and their hatred. What do you think would happen if the United States of America bunker busted inside of the country of Iran? What would happen in a generation? I believe, and I hope I'm so wrong, that there have been sleeper cells come into this country since Joe Biden left the back door open. There are people here that are capable of doing almost anything and everything. So what do we do? You tell me what we do. And if they get a bomb, one of the things about the times of Khrushchev and the times of Stalin is they knew the retaliation would be horrible. And this idea that I listened to on talk radio that these people welcome death and want to die, it's absurd.
Well, Peter, we need to control our own borders. We need to know who's in our country.
Absolutely.
You're right. They're here. In fact, I heard an interview with Netanyahu over the weekend. He said that the Iranians have tried to assassinate Trump twice. Well, that's news to me. I don't know. So anyways, there's already people that thinking that it's already going on. But I think, to kind of wrap up the call, this has been going on my entire life, obviously. I think what's going to happen if we go bomb this is it's going to ensure that it will continue for the lives of my 3 sons and probably the life of my grandson. So that's a very discouraging thought.
Take care. We go to Rick in Centennial. We're coming up on time. Rick, thank you for waiting. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Peter. I love your show. Last week's show was one of the best I ever heard.
Wow.
And I'm not trying to butter you up or anything like that, but I love your show. Here's my thinking, and I'm not smart enough to figure out whether we bunker bust or not bunker bust. I've been listening to everybody, but so far, nobody has said, let's just say we don't do anything, Israel's not successful. And then Iran builds this thing up to the point where they've already got 60% enrichment. They can already build bombs if they have the right stuff to marry things together. They're saying death to America. Do we just live under this sword of Damocles for the rest of our lives? What do we do?
If there's a sort of Damocles that somebody's living under, I think it's the people in Iran. If the United States, the power of this country, let loose, is unimaginable. And I'm not saying that these people aren't who they are, but they're not who they're being portrayed as. I don't know how big the atomic bomb club is now, but Pakistan and India, and to his credit, Trump stopped that. But how many countries in the world today have atomic capability? The Turks, do the Sauds have a weapon? Do the Turks have a weapon? The British, the French, certainly this country, the Israelis. I think the South Africans gave theirs up. But these are weapons now that for the life of me. So when people on talk radio, other places, say Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon, what are you going to do? Are you going to take our country back into another war in the Middle East and take stealth bombers and drop bunker busters or B-52s, or you going? I mean, think about how easy it is to get into it and how impossible it will be to get away from it.
Peter, I'm not disagreeing with anything you just said. I'm not, okay? But what I would like to see in the next 2 weeks, if at all possible, is a few people that aren't going with the flow make it at least look like we're capable of doing this in the next couple of weeks, and see if we can bring Iran to the table and negotiate. If we can't, I don't want us to get into a war.
But the first time you strike, and that's Barbara Tuchman's, the great historian Barbara Tuchman's arguments.
Yes, sir.
I can't imagine what the world would look like, what the region would look like. A war with Iran would wreck everything. And
Peter, I don't want to have a war with Iran.
But bomb them, you got a war.
I'd like to see if we can push them to the table to at least negotiate, tell the Israelis to back off so that Iran can't use the excuse they're being bombed, knock this stuff off, and see if we can come to some kind of an agreement. I don't know if it's possible or not.
I agree with that.
I don't want to get into war either, okay?
And we have had enough of this country going into war in places in the world that have done nothing. And they've wrecked so many young men and women, people that are never going to be okay again, in places that the United States simply gets up and walks away from. And
yes, I know.
I mean, don't sign up for another war in the Middle East. What have you just learned from Bush and Cheney and through Obama, and what have we? And my God, how Biden handles these things. We can't. We just. I mean, I know there's Levin and these characters. They want a war. I can't imagine one, because it won't end. It's easy to get in, and it's hard to get out. And just please don't let them go to war again. And to do what? To make Israel happy? Is that why you go to war?
Hell no. I'm looking at America, not Israel.
Well, others aren't.
Yeah, I don't want. Look, I just don't want us to be under threat. And then on the other side, I wasn't going to mention this, but I decided to. I was over in Southeast Asia in 61 and 62 with the U.S. military.
Do it quick. We're running up time.
Hey, you know where it went.
Yeah.
And I had a TS clearance at the time, so I'm reading all this stuff. At least the stuff I was privy to.
I got to pull the pin on you. I'm sorry because of time.
Look, you're a great guy. Thanks for letting me get a word in, and you have a good day.
Thank you. Everybody, let's please take care of yourselves. I'll see you next Saturday. Thanks, Adam. 710 KNUS. We are Denver's talk station.